motion to confirm the agenda, please? Martin? And Jason? As amended? Yes. Okay, so it's to confirm the agenda as amended. So Martin and Jason, any discussion on that? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Declaration of pecuniary interest. You can declare now or anytime through the meeting. Seeing none, we'll move right into the public meeting. Since this is a planning thing, I will read the script. Public planning meeting concerning zoning bylaw amendments pursuant to Section 34 of the Planning Act. They are files. Here we are. C-2019 and C-2022. Okay. Any person or public body is entitled to attend the public meeting and make written or oral submissions in support of or in opposition to any of the proposed zoning bylaw amendments. Written comments should be submitted to the clerk. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Southgate before the zoning bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of council of the Township of Southgate to the local planning appeals tribunal. And in addition, they may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the local planning appeals tribunal. In the opinion of the board, there are reasonable grounds to do so. Okay, the first zoning bylaw amendment is C-20-19, that's PowerMax Inc. Purpose of this zoning bylaw amendment application is to consider a change that will allow for small-scale industrial shop use to be added to a portion of the property. The owners wish to add industrial shop, office, and power room to the list of permitted uses. The industrial workshop, office, and power room is proposed to be 750 meters squared. The outside storage area is proposed to be 500 meters squared. The effect of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment would be to change the zoning symbol on a portion of the property from agricultural A1 to agricultural exception A1 followed by a number, to allow for small-scale secondary use to be permitted on the property. The environmental protection zone boundary, this is going to be a fun day with me trying to read, may be adjusted based on Conservation Authority comments. And this is on concession 4, lot 39 in the geographical township of Southgate, Can I have confirmation from the clerk that the proper notice was given in accordance with the Planning Act?
Yeah, notice was sent on November 8th, and the sign was posted on the property on November 11th.
Thank you. I'll ask the planner, Clint Stredwick, to review correspondence received from commenting agencies.
Thank you, Mayor Woodbury. The first comments we have are from the County of Grey. The county planning staff recommend receiving comment from the Conservation Authority regarding the above noted natural hazard and heritage features on the property. Provided the positive comments are received from the Conservation Authority, planning staff have no concerns with the application. So the Conservation Authority did respond, and the Grand River Conservation Authority has no objection to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. The Township Fire Department indicate the proposed power clean shop in this application is an existing structure, or will it be a new building? It's a new building. For the purposes of zoning, fire has no issue, and they would like to be more involved when the actual building is being constructed, which is about what we expect. The Enbridge Gas Inc. does not object to the proposed application. However, they reserve the right to amend comments or development conditions. The Historic Saugeen Métis have reviewed the applications and have no objection or opposition. And the Public Works Department indicated it's a rural gravel road and it's load restricted, and a safe access can be provided. And that's it for the comments.
Thank you. Were any written comments received from members of the public?
None received.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or discussion from council at this time? Martin?
Just maybe a concern, looking at the environmental constraints, one line is almost checked off solid, and then the official plan is hazards and wetlands. Do you have any idea, or in the site plan, is there anything to be said about the kind of materials they're going to be storing? Because it is powder coating and hazardous material and so forth.
Certainly we can put some restrictions on there if we wanted to at the site plan stage. However, we do have the Conservation Authority saying where you're putting things is fine, and I would rely on them in that regard according to our memorandum of understanding.
Barbara?
Good Chair. Thank you, Clinton. In the past, we've mentioned in the notice what kind of industrial shop, or will the type of use be mentioned or any restrictions placed from a fire response perspective? Because to Councillor Shipston's point, there are chemicals on site, and in the past we've always, metal workshop, powder coating, or some other woodworking.
Well, personally, I'd like to get away from zoning them specifically to wood or metal or powder coating or what have you, because if they come and change from metal to wood, we have to go through this entire process again. Whereas if we say industrial shop, it's an industrial shop. There's a site plan that will indicate what's there. The fire department will be involved when it's actually being constructed with the building department. And there are also other things in the works in terms of fire response that our fire chief and I will be working on hopefully in the new year to add some additional safety.
So just to that then, in the site plan, would there be a statement or a requirement that any change in use, the fire department should be notified? I'm just wondering how we keep everyone safe, and that's something that you're going to work on.
That's likely one thing we could add in there, and it puts some of the onus back on the owner to do that sort of thing.
Awesome. Thank you.
Just as a way of comment, there are municipalities that they haven't done that. They've put it in a bylaw. Like in Mississauga, they have to notify when there's a change of use.
Yeah.
So that notify the fire department so that they can do a new pre-plan and things like that. So they're, I think the broader way to it may be better than individual. So yeah, good. Any other questions or things from council at this time? Seeing none, I'll now ask if the applicant or agent is present, and please identify yourself by stating your name for the record, and would you like to make any representation for your application? And for you guys that just got here a few minutes ago, this is the one for Noah Sure. So that's all.
That's me.
Okay, did you want to say anything?
Oh, I don't think so.
Yeah, okay. Mr. Bowman there, I see you're here, so thank you for coming again. So now, is there anyone present that would like to make a submission in support of this application? Anyone present that would like to make a submission in opposition? Okay, seeing none for both of those. Any further questions from council? Okay, seeing none, that's the that file. And there, I got it here now. Yeah, thank you. Now we'll move on to the next file, which is C20-22. purpose of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment application is to consider a change that would allow for small-scale industrial shop use to be added to a portion of the property. The owners wish to add an industrial shop, office, and power room to the list of permitted uses. The industrial shop, office, and power room is proposed to be 650 meters squared. Outside storage area is proposed to be 557 meters squared. The effect of the proposed bylaw amendment would be to change the zoning symbol on a portion of the property from agriculture A1 to agriculture exception, A1 followed by a number, to allow for small-scale secondary use to be permitted on the property. The environmental protection zone boundary may be adjusted based on Conservation Authority comments. The location of the subject property is legally described as Concession 8, Lot 30, Geographic Township of Croton. The lands are alternately described as 126318 Southgate Road 12, and it's shown on the key map that was on the notice. Okay. Can I have confirmation from the clerk? Proper notice was given.
Notice was sent out on November 8th, and the sign was posted on the property on November 11th.
Thank you. We'll go back to you, Clint, and for comments from the agencies.
Thank you, Mayor Woodbury. So the County of Grey has provided comments indicating county planning staff do not perceive any negative impacts to any natural heritage features, as the development will not be occurring within 120 meters of in the adjacent lands. Provided that positive comments are received from the Conservation Authority regarding hazard lands, county planning staff have no concerns. We have comments from the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority. And they indicate that all of the plan review functions listed in the agreement have been assessed with respect to the application, and the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is acceptable to the SVCA staff. They do note there's a potential for threatened and endangered species habitat, and to contact the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks to verify those features if they exist. The Public Works Department indicates safe access can be provided. It's a rural gravel road standard. It's a load restricted road, and beyond that they have no additional comments. Enbridge Gas has no objection to the proposal, and that's all the comments we have at this time.
Thank you. Were there any comments from the public?
None received.
Okay. Are there any questions, discussion from council at this time? Martin?
Through the chair. Clint, you mentioned that one part some endangered species and they have to get confirmation from the ministry. Time-wise, how long would that take? Is it quick, or is it they look at a map, or?
Sometimes it can be really quick. What it means is somewhere on the property, and I'm going to hazard a guess, it's probably towards the back near that creek or river, whatever. There's sometime in the past 100 years, there has been an endangered species of some kind there. And therefore there's a record of it, that it's somewhere there, or it could even be on the neighboring property. And then they just verify with the ministry whether or not it is there and whether or not they need to do anything about it.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from council at this time? Okay, seeing none, I'll now ask if the applicant or agent is present. Please identify yourself by stating your name for the record, and would you like to make any representation on the application?
That's me, and nothing to say, no?
Okay, thank you. No problem at all. Is there anyone present who would like to make a submission in support of this application? Seeing none, is there anyone here that would like to make a submission in opposition? Now, is there any further questions or discussion from council? Seeing none, I declare this portion of the public meeting for the planning bit is adjourned. Thank you. Good. Okay, so now we'll move on with the rest of our meeting. We need a motion that we receive the presentation from Gray Health. Thanks for coming out, Heidi. From Public Health, Gray Bruce, as information mover, second Martin, and Michael. Saw you doing that. You were doing the thumb. And Amanda and Catherine, if you'd like to come up, one or both, or
So I'll start things off. I'm Amber Sheik, and I'm a health promoter at the Gray Bruce Health Unit. And joining me today is Catherine, who's a public health dietitian, and you'll hear from her a little bit later. So thank you very much for having us today. We're happy to give an update on cannabis, and specifically some issues around edible cannabis, which is now becoming legal in Canada. So on the next slide, you'll see just a little bit about cannabis in general. So cannabis is a plant genus that has several species. There are different strains, the two most common being Acacia and Indica, and most plants today are a hybrid of those. When we look at the chemicals in cannabis, the two most commonly known are CBD and THC. So those are the short forms. I have the longer versions up on the slide if you're interested in memorizing those. But THC is generally associated with higher risks, and that's the component of the plant that gives a high as well. And CBD is potentially the part that's being researched a bit more around medical use and some of the benefits that's more associated with CBD. And so cannabis has both of these components in them, and different strains and different products will have different ratios of CBD to THC. And so if someone is choosing to use cannabis, our message is that you would choose to use that has a strain that has higher CBD and lower THC to help reduce some of the harm. On the next slide, we have a few local statistics. These are from before legalization. And so we could see that cannabis was already a widely used product. So 43% of the population in Grey Bruce had used cannabis in their lifetime. 26% had used it in the past year. Older adults were a group that were a bit more or less likely to have used cannabis, so only 19% had used, which is lower than some of the younger age groups. So it will be interesting to see what these statistics look like moving forward as we go to what our landscape looks like now and after legalization. There were also 166 emergency department visits related to cannabis last year in 2018. So it's definitely an issue that does have some potential health risks and health harms associated with it, and that's just a little picture of what we're already seeing in Grey Bruce. Again, that's mostly before legalization. On the next slide, just a little bit about medical cannabis use. Since we're in a world of legalization now, we talk a lot about recreational use, but medical cannabis use is still the same processes in place as it was before. In cannabis, there are synthetic formulas that have been approved, so there's stronger evidence medically for things such as nerve pain that's unresponsive to standard treatment, end-of-life cancer pain, chemotherapy-related nausea and vomiting, and extreme muscle rigidity. So those are the only 4 things that it's actually been approved for. So it's not been approved for anxiety, depression, glaucoma, and those are maybe some of the myths or things that we hear out and about. And so the message here is really to work with your healthcare provider if you are or anybody is thinking of using cannabis as a way of self-medicating themselves. It's really important to check in with the healthcare provider and think about some of those concerns. So on the next slide, again, speaking to that a bit more, medically, cannabis is not appropriate when someone is under the age of 25 years, so we know that our brain is still developing up until the age of 25, so the same goes for recreational cannabis use. Anyone with a history of psychosis, unstable mental illness, those would be other things that would suggest that it's not appropriate. Cardiovascular disease, respiratory disease, and pregnant or breastfeeding people. And then on the next slide, we have a little bit specifically about older adults. So we see this as a potentially growing group of people who may be choosing to use cannabis, maybe have or haven't in the past, but with some of the medical concerns that arise or the aging process, some older adults might be uninformed about the risks or have difficulty distinguishing what information is credible versus what isn't credible. But really we would say anyone who has a history of mental disorders, substance use disorder, cognitive impairment, cardiovascular disease, unstable blood pressure, impaired balance, it would be a concern to be using cannabis, so certainly working with a healthcare provider would be really important, and recognizing too that cannabis interacts with drugs, including alcohol, so avoiding using other substances at the same time. And these are messages that are also within the low-risk cannabis use guidelines. And then one more slide for me. Just a few important points to know, that you must be legal age to possess cannabis in Ontario, which is the age of 19. There are strict penalties to applying use with cannabis. You can legally possess up to 30 grams of legal dried cannabis in public, so that's cannabis you obtained from a legal source like the online Ontario Cannabis Store or one of the licensed retailers, which I know you won't have close by in this area. And the last message being that it is illegal to take cannabis and cannabis products across the border, so that's something to be aware of as well. I'll turn it over to Catherine to share a bit more on edibles specifically.
Thanks, Amber. And in case you're madly trying to take notes, we do have two fabulous fact sheets for you, one about edibles, extracts, and topicals, and another on those low-risk guidelines. So we'll leave those here for you as well.
Great, thank you.
So this is where dietitians sort of get involved with the edible use here. And as Amber was saying, it's a bit of a change in landscape. So as this slide shows, if you look at a food, you cannot really tell it has cannabis in it or not. And Sudbury Health Unit has done a really great campaign with 2 chocolate chip cookies saying, can you tell the difference? Kids can't. So our big concern is, again, reducing the harms possibly associated with adults using these foods that look like fun candy cookie treats, and that, of course, young people may consume too much of, and then find themselves in one of those emergency department visit statistics. So the other problem is, some of you may be familiar with the other forms of consuming cannabis, such as smoking it or using it as an ointment. Those things take just the smoking in very quickly, the ointment pretty direct too, but edibles can take up to 2 hours to take effect. So you eat your one cookie, you think nothing's happening, so I'm eating another one, nothing's happening, so you've eaten half a row of cookies before you finally start feeling some of the effects, and now you're in trouble stuck on your couch for the next 4 to 12 hours. And even up to 24 hours, these effects can last. So we certainly don't want people hopping in a car and driving, not being aware that they haven't been experiencing the full effect of that intake. So we can go to the next slide. It's not just foods that we're going to have to be concerned about. There's also cannabis-infused beverages, and the one in the middle there called Saria, that's what is already out in the market. Molson's here in Canada is really on the developmental bandwagon as well, so I'm sure we'll see a Canadian version soon. Saria was made by a retired brewmaster from Coors who went out on his own and figured out how to de-alcoholize beer and then infuse cannabis back into it. So of course, as Amber said, you don't want to consume alcohol and cannabis together because it magnifies the effects of both and can have some pretty unpleasant side effects. So they can't sell true alcohol with cannabis in it. They have to get the alcohol out first. So there's also teas and other refreshment products. So be watching for more of those, all available on the internet immediately through the States. So for Canadian edibles, thank goodness the government is trying to sort of equal the playing field a little bit, and they want to make sure that it has plain packaging, no fancy candy-looking packages. On each package, there must be a standard symbol to warn that this product contains cannabis, and it can't have more than 10 milligrams of THC per whole package. Most of the recommendations say don't start with more than 2.5 milligrams, so that's going to be in sort of one portion of a chocolate bar in a package, but the whole, if you ate that whole chocolate bar, you could get up to the 10 milligrams, you could still be in trouble. Of course, child-resistant packaging is certainly going to be a big piece of this as well. So on the next slide, we see the cannabis symbol. So it's the stop sign with the lovely cannabis leaf. And then the wording in the yellow box is the change. It won't always be about pregnant or breastfeeding women. Some will be about not using it unless you're 26 years of age, and some of those other contraindications that Amber spoke about. So the message will be rotating, but that symbol will be the same on each package. And you can see in the States right now, the next slide does not have plain packaging, and everything looks quite delicious and chewy and candy-filled. So you cannot blame children for mistaking these things as just a regular treat that they might get around the house. So what are some of the big implications of having products like this? Next slide has those listed. As a dietitian, the new food guide came out, right? We're trying to get people to eat healthy, wholesome, grown-in-the-ground foods. This is only going to add to all that processed packaged sugar and fat-filled treats that Canadians probably already eat a little too much of. So it's going against what we hope people will eat. There could be some real food safety concerns if people buy just dried cannabis and try to make their own edibles at home. And hopefully they will follow safe food guidelines to create it, but then also to label it and store it. Because if you make a big batch of cannabis butter or oil and don't label it as such, then family members or friends could come in and borrow and use and not know what they're quite getting to. Our food systems are also experiencing some of these implications. I'm from the Saugeen Shores area, and I have never seen so many health wanted signs on restaurants and local shops because everybody has gone to work at 7 Acres, where they have benefits and a living wage, which is great, but we're already seeing sort of the value for people in our other service industries is decreasing, and partly because we don't value food enough too. So farm workers and restaurant workers are certainly, we're going to be in a pinch for finding enough labor there. And then land use. You talked about some land use changes for your area this morning for industrial uses, but what if we're having big grow-ops outside, which they are, there are no applications approved yet for our area, but could be coming, and certainly there's a manufacturing application in Owen Sound. So it's going to change the whole food landscape, even though it's going to touch a small portion of the population. So we're always about reducing the risks. The next slide has the main things to remember, that if you're choosing to use, we want you to do it as wisely and safely as you can. Keep labels on all your products. Store in child-safe containers, lock boxes up high, away from pets, which we've had more calls about pet concerns than people concerns, which is a bit sad. But there are people who, I guess. And we want to make sure everyone stays safe in the home. And that website, ccsa.ca/cannabis, is just an ongoing site that will have great information, up-to-date, accurate. And that's the thing. There's so much misinformation going on out there that we want to help people stick with the facts. And then I think that last slide is, again, a plethora of other information that you can peruse at your leisure. And as I say, we have 2 of the handouts for you here today. So we really appreciate you and Barbara, the invitation to come to council, just to make sure, even if it's not something you're ever going to use yourself, and it's really important to be informed so you can help maybe correct some conversations that are happening out there in the community, or at least lead them to proper information. So I think we're done.
That's great. Thank you very much for the information. It's a steep learning curve, I think, for a lot of people. And there's our friends on Facebook. There's a lot of misinformation about a lot of things. So it's very helpful to come out and let us know what's going on. Are there any questions or comments, Martin?
Yeah, Catherine, it mentions there the food processing, like nuts, it can't be in the same area. Do you see maybe a trend to go into more, if there are policies to restrict that, do you see more producers like craft producers coming into being, and is that going to affect your budget to go around and check them out?
Yeah, we won't be the dietitians checking it, yeah, that's gonna be inspectors. But it's interesting, if you manufacture, it cannot be in the same place where any other food is manufactured. So if Kraft wants to get in on the gig, they have to build a whole new facility. So it could increase, and that would be more at a federal level even, I think sometimes. If it's a local ma and pa shop, which isn't gonna be allowed, that's when our inspectors would come in. But I can't see it being, it's still a very gray area. Our inspector I talked to, who's the lead on cannabis, was just down at Guelph for a symposium, and there are still a lot of unknowns about who exactly is going to be responsible for those inspections. So time will tell, I guess.
That sounds normal.
Thank you, Amber, and thank you, Catherine, for coming out. The discussion at the library was certainly lively, and I think we probably could have gone on for over an hour with people comparing stories and recipes, but I think that's where there's some concern as well when people start creating their own recipes and perhaps not knowing the measurements, the quantity of what they put in their brownies. And I do remember the conversation about giving a whole new meaning to potluck. So, you know, this Christmas we might want to be wary of the cookies and brownies that we're consuming. But thank you for coming, making arrangements to present to the rest of council. Getting the word out, I think, and dispelling those myths.
Yeah, it's everyone's responsibility. I mean, we're here as an entity to make sure you're getting the most evidence-based, current information, but exactly, it's everyone's role. So it could be an interesting conversation around the Christmas table this year, for sure.
Around the cookie table.
Cookie exchanges.
Yeah, yeah,
So what do you want the handout?
Oh, I would love to hear.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much. So we have a motion to receive this presentation. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Thanks again. And up next, we have a presentation from Chris Ferrier from Fire Marquee. And I'll need mover and seconder to receive his presentation. Jim and Martin, come on up. How are you?
I'm very well, Your Worship.
Good.
Good morning to you and your colleagues. It's a pleasure to be here. As a former mayor of the town of Collingwood and councillor from 97 to 2010, I always enjoyed these presentations. Thank you for your service. It's probably your first year anniversary from your election. So we'll get through it as quickly as we can. I know we have a busy agenda. Next slide, please. Firemark began its operations in planning over 11 years ago, but we've been operating for 8.5 years. We started with 0 clients. We now have 110 clients and growing. In Ontario, we have about 96 clients. Our largest client would be the City of Kitchener. Our smallest client would be the village of Newberry, which is near London, Ontario, with a population of 499, and a council of 5. So 1% of that population are elected officials. So stay away from those family barbecues. Next slide, please. There's approximately 198 insurance companies operating in Canada, and most of them are operating in Ontario because of our population. So you'll see the top 20 there. My home in Collingwood, Ontario is insured with Aviva, the number 2 insurer. You may recognize your own. When we go down to 20, you'll see that they have less than 1% of the market share. Your local mutual insurance companies are great community partners, but they are small market share companies. But as local officials, you will recognize them as strong community partners. Next slide, please. Almost all insurance properties in Canada have coverages under the additional coverages section for fire department service charge. If you take a look at your own policy at home or your business policy, you'll see under the additional coverages section, there will be coverage for fire department service charge. In this particular example, there's $25,000. This is a small commercial policy for fire department expenses incurred in response to an insured peril like a structure fire. Next slide. There's also a lot of smaller amounts, especially in some of the mutuals. you'll see that there's a $1,000 limit. This is actually a small rural farm policy. It's an extension of the home coverage. So Mennonite Mutual, as an example, would have $1,000 coverage. However, I want to emphasize that this is the most dynamic part of the marketplace right now. Intact Insurance is buying up farm mutuals, and their new policy wording, they're increasing the coverage from $1,000 to $25,000 for farm. And we're seeing Wawanesa actually taking a more aggressive stand in the farm market and increasing the coverages from $1,000 to $5,000 and $10,000. Go ahead, next slide, please. And next slide, please. The legal definition, and I like to emphasize this to elected officials because you may get asked about our program. What we do is we invoice the insurance company on behalf of your fire department. So I'm not sending an invoice to a policyholder and asking the policyholder to pay the bill and then go to their insurer and say, can you please reimburse me? No, I don't want them going through that process. Our dealing is usually with the adjuster for one of the 198 insurance companies that are operating in the country, and that's who most of our interaction is with. Next slide, please. And next slide, please. Essentially, I have provided to your fire chief an example of a bylaw. You need to amend your fire department schedule of fees, and I've provided the wording for the chief to do that. There is a brand new bylaw that I got from a municipal law specialist from Templeman Law in Brockville, Ontario, for our client in Eastern Ontario. We actually paid for their solicitor to draft the bylaw so then I could use it to talk to our new clients and potential clients about implementing it. So this is the version just before, but essentially it's very similar to this. Next slide, please. The bylaw amendment is required because the insurance contract is a contract between the insurance company and the policyholder. However, when you take a look at the wordings, almost all of the wordings have something similar to this. We will reimburse you for fire department charges when you are required to pay. So, at the local level of government, you're privileged to pass local legislation through a bylaw. That is the key to unlock the contract wording that creates the legal obligation for the insurance company to pay you. The reason that is in the contract is they do not want you going back to a large loss incident. You can go retroactively 2 years for incident loss. However, if you don't have bylaw wording to unlock that contract to create a legal obligation, you're at the mercy of the insurance adjuster to pay you, and you're not likely to be paid. Next one, please. The standard incident report, I've gone over this with Derek, and essentially what we want is that we want a copy of the standard incident report, which is work that they're already, paperwork that they're already filling out. We have a database of over 1,600 policy wordings. We also have a database of insurance professional contacts across the country. So let's say we're dealing with a cooperators file here. I know who the regional adjuster is for cooperators. I know how they like the package of information put together because the adjuster for this area may like the package put differently than the adjuster, let's say, in Ottawa area. So we put all that information together, we pull up the policy wordings, and we invoice the limits of the policy. It takes about 13 to 14 weeks for the average recovery. The shortest recovery has been 8 days, and the longest recovery has been 34 months. It just depends on the complexity of the file. And in an industrial or a commercial file, you may have one property, but you may have 6 to 10 different insurers. The broker will sell the policy to a number of insurance companies, and they might take 10%, 15%, 5% of the risk. Next slide, please. I've done a cost recovery projection for you. This is your share, so on the low end, about $6,800, and on the high end, about $10,600 is the average. So it could be a situation where the coverages are low in the policy, so maybe it's a bad year, or you might have policy coverages that are high, and therefore we will exceed the amount that we projected. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. And the revenues stay within the fire service, otherwise it could be legally deemed to be indirect taxation. So it is a cost recovery mechanism that can be used for public education, next slide please. Personnel training, and next slide please. And capital purchases. What our recommendation is the revenue comes in, the cost recovery comes in, it goes out to a reserve, and then the following year, when Derek presents his budget to you, you know that you need a large percentage from taxation, maybe some from development charges, maybe some from a grant from the province. But you'll also have a new envelope of money that you can attach to the fire service budget from fire market recoveries. Next slide, please. I love doing this presentation with AMCTO area group. I've done this several times. Jody Johnson, who is well known in that group, she's a friend of mine. I know I have this right. Your municipal act allows you to pass bylaws. It allows you to charge cost recovery fees. And the greatest power that the province gave us was natural persons powers. And the test to apply for that is reasonableness. So the municipal act used to be prescriptive. Thou shalt do this, and if it didn't say you could do it, you were not allowed to do it. Now you can do just about anything you want, as long as you apply the test of reasonableness. So is it reasonable for local elected officials to pass a bylaw to unlock an insurance contract to access the funds to which they're entitled? And I would like to emphasize, the policyholder is not entitled to that money. Only your fire service is. So if they don't get it, the insurance industry company keeps it. So of course it's reasonable for you to access those funds. Next slide, please. I get this all the time. Oh, my insurance rates are going to go up. They are not going to go up. It's much like your budgeting process. In setting the heat and hydro for this building, it might be $50,000 a year. Your concern at budget time is if it came in at 48 or if it came in at 52. You only get concerned if it's an over-under, and if it's a little bit, or if it's a lot. Establishing what the premium is for the policyholder, they've established that there are incidents per year, and they should be paying out. They know they should be paying out, and that's like your tax rate. You know what you should be getting, but your actual could be different than what you're setting for your premium or your budget. In this case, prior to 2010, the actual was 0. Since 2010, or since when we began, we've recovered over $9 million in 8.5 years for fire departments across the country. And so this will have no effect on your insurance rate. We are piggybacking on the claim process. We are not initiating a new claim. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. It is deductible exclusionary. When I was hired by Firemark, I went through with the municipal lens on to ensure that we were not going to harm your policyholder in any way. So it does not require a deductible. It doesn't take away from the amount of money that they are entitled to receive, and it doesn't have effect on the future premium rate. Next slide, please. You're going into budget time, I'm assuming. Most municipal councils are, and isn't this why I pay taxes? You're paying taxes to get your fire service well-trained and well-equipped and ready to respond. I am not going to sit here or stand here today and say I'm going to bring back 100% of the cost. I'm going to bring back between 0.75% to about 2.25%, depending on the responses throughout the year. What I'm saying is that the insurance industry is charging their clients for this coverage. You're entitled to that coverage, and I'm asking for them to pay their fair share to you. Next slide, please. Thanks for telling us how to do it. What do we need you for? It's a process that is a little more adversarial than collegial. So the industry is designed to protect your bottom line, like most businesses, where we do operate to protect our bottom line. So Firemark was began and started by a number of retired insurance adjusters. So the president of our company is 30+ years with Royal Insurance. He was their senior claims manager. He handled $500 million a year in claims, and he used to audit the province of Ontario's property claims for them. So we're bringing a lot of knowledge. We're bringing a database of experience and interaction. 9 years now of interacting with the marketplace. with our program. Next slide, please. There's also a very complicated file. This is a tornado that occurred in Angus, Ontario, right near Baseball, and in 2014. There was 103 properties that were impacted by this. Most people would think there's probably 5 or 10 insurance companies that would be responsible for these 103 properties. There's 41. Not one insurance company had more than 4 properties. So most of them had 1 or 2 or 3. The most was 4. It took us 11 months to receive the files. We have 2 years to recover. I'm not going to drive here and say, give me the file, give me the file. You have your responsibility to your constituents. I fully understand that. And it took us 10 months to recover the costs for Essa Township and the 4 neighboring departments that responded as well to help them. You may be familiar with former Mayor Terry Dowdle of Essa Township, who's also was a deputy warden in the county of Simcoe, but he's now the MP for Simcoe Grey. He's a friend of mine as well, and he endorses our program. And next slide, please. It's fun dropping off money. And these are some fire sheets that I've dropped money off. The difference between doing a deputation like this and setting up a meeting with the fire chief when I drop off money is, oh yeah, I don't have to set up a meeting to drop off money. Everybody comes out of a meeting to pick up a check. And that's it in a nutshell. If you have any questions or concerns, I'd be happy to address them.
Thank you very much. Barbara?
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
And so, 2 questions. You mentioned that you can go back 2 years, so we might be able to recover costs, fire department costs back 2 years, or is it just once going forward, once we sign on?
So I don't want to misrepresent what I'm saying or mislead you in any way. It's very, very unlikely that we could go retroactively. It's from the date of the bylaw change moving forward.
So 2019 is off the books. That was just an example of what we could have had we been with Marquee. And how do you get paid?
Oh, sorry, I didn't mention that. 70% of the funds recovered are returned to you, and 30% we retain for ourselves. So we make actually 26.5%, because 3.5% goes to the federal government for GST. If there's no annual and there's no minimum, and if Derek is not familiar with the file or that it's recoverable, because it might not be a structure fire, it could be another insured peril, and he sends us the file and we review it and it's not recoverable, there's no cost to you. We only receive money if you receive money.
Thank you. Martin?
Thank you, Chris, for that, because that was one of my questions, the percentage. How is the climate change insurance policy affecting this too? Is going to be more of that? More claims to the fire department, so we could possibly make even more money, less your percentage?
Yes, I think that in response to natural disasters, if we're talking about more tornadoes, if we're talking about more wind events, if you're talking about flooding, now the nice work that the Conservation Authorities do, and Conservation Ontario has done with mapping, so the way the insurance industry is rolling out the flood coverage is that they're marketing to flood-prone areas, but they're selling the policies to non-flood prone areas. And so, I mean, it's the game of managing risk. So if your home is flooded right now with a natural, or with a pipe that's burst, and the fire service goes out and they pump out your basement, that's recoverable. And so is the damage to your home. Overland flooding, it may be recoverable depending on your coverage, or not. It just depends. It's been rolling out since the Great Flood, or the Big Flood in Western and now Calgary. Thank you.
Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Currier, for your presentation. I would take a little bit of exception with your characterization of insurance companies. I'm involved with a small mutual myself. Our responsibility is not to the bottom line, it's to our policyholders. But the question
there was no offense.
No, I know that. I just wanted to be clear that our responsibility is to pay out the losses, not to pad the bottom line. Contrary to what insurance companies get bashed all the time for that. But anyway, my question was, you say the policy rates will not go up. I would suggest they might, because if the insurance company starts paying out more claims, your loss ratio is going to change, and that will affect the policy rates ultimately. Now, in the instances you're talking about, it's probably going to be pretty small or even negligible, but it will affect the loss ratio ultimately, because premiums are based on what the possible payout may be all the time, and it's not just fire claims, it's any claim. So, you know, depending on what the losses that are paid out, that affects the premium ultimately.
True, true. The nice thing with mutuals is that they do publish their financial statements online, and they're far easier to read than the big companies, because there's too many zeros after those ones. So we've done a cost analysis, and we've also, with the insurance professionals who have retired and work in our company, I will agree with you, it's negligible, it may not even be measurable. So you're talking about 0.028 of 1% likely is what the paid out loss is. It will not have an effect on the premiums. You're paying between $1.90, $3.40 per $1,000 of coverage. We have that information. So if you're a small mutual and you're paying $1.90 for $1,000 worth of fire department coverage, and let's say you have 10,000 clients, so you're getting $19,000 for that, and you might have what loss. So it would be like me saying to you, because this line item for heat and hydro of this building has gone up from $50,000 to $52,000, that your taxes are going to go up. No, they're not. There's 1,000 other line items for you to deal with, and the unlikelihood is it will be, if everything else is the same, it won't affect the overall tax rate. And I know we're getting into semantics, but I will agree with you, it is negligible at best or worse, depending on your interpretation.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you,
Yeah.
thank you, members of the council.
So, do you have a motion before you to accept the presentation? All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. We have a motion to accept the minutes of November 20th and November 6th, closed session meeting. All in favor? Oh, no, mover seconder after? Okay. Brian will move it, and Martin just put his hands up, so I'll say he seconded. Any discussion on it? I'll leave it with that. Seeing none, all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Okay, report of municipal officers. Chief, be it resolved that council received the staff report Fire 2019-101 as information and consider the approval of bylaw 2019-183. Do I have a mover and seconder for those? Barb and seconder? Brian? Okay. Derek?
Just with my staff report here, I looked back at 2019, there was 10 incidents where we would have been able to recover costs if we were in agreement with Fire Marquee. Another big point too, I don't know if Chris mentioned it, was if there's a fire on the property and the homeowner does not go through insurance, and I submit my SIR to Chris, we can't take any of that money. It doesn't affect them. It's only if they access and go through their insurance company for a claim that they're entitled to that money. So if you have a multi-location fire at your house and you're like, I'm going to fix it myself, you get no money back. It doesn't affect them whatsoever. That's their choice. We just put that paper aside. So it's only if they actually make the claim. Yeah, basically it's the 10 incidents of the lot. Depending on the different coverage, it could have been 10,000, it could have been more, and that could come back to helping us with budget costs, going towards purchasing new trucks down the future line, more training. That's all I got. Any questions?
Great, thanks. Are there any questions from council? Okay, seeing none. Oops, seeing one.
Yeah, and this is more for discussion purposes. Car accidents is part of it?
No, this is only insurance claims on a property.
Can you go the route of car accidents?
May I?
Yeah.
No.
an answer.
You are an identified first-party coverage under the property policy, and so motor vehicle is often done through regulation, and then the costs that are awarded in a motor vehicle case could be tied up. But it just doesn't make a business case yet with the existing legislation for us to take that on.
But we could as a municipality, I get down that road.
For motor vehicle? Yes, and direct through OASD would have information on that.
Go ahead.
So currently, MTO, any accident that happens on Highway 1089, we are able to receive funds. I submit paperwork to the MTO, and it's $485. The price just went up per truck per hour, depending on what we do, we recover. Currently, in the past too, we have been billing non-Southgate residents for an accident that happens in Southgate, and so we recover funds that way as well to cover the response of our vehicles. So we do collect some money from there already.
It's just an important discussion
Yep.
for everybody to realize is, County Road 14, that's not residents on a Friday night coming through, that get in trouble in snowstorms, so I think that's good.
Yep, thank you. Mark?
Just a comment here about the driving. I know somebody who, 3-4 months later, got a letter from the MTO and the insurance saying you owe $850 for the truck, and then it actually even had manpower time. And he had insurance of his own that covered that, so it is possible.
Thank you. All right, not seeing any further discussion or questions. All in favor of receiving this information? That is carried. Thank you. Next up, we have motion for the bylaw to authorize the cost recovery for the fire department response and for the mayor and the clerk or deputy clerk to sign. The mover, Barb, seconder, Martin. Any discussion on this? Or questions? Okay, seeing none, all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Yep. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Building official. Oh, he took his nameplate and he left. Oh, well. We have a motion here, to receive the staff report, and direct staff to present the schedule of, recommended schedule of fees at a public meeting. That'll be tomorrow. Barb will move that, and Michael will second it. So now we'll just wait and see what Bev has to say.
Hello, Darryl.
While we're waiting for him. There he is. Hi. Where's your nameplate? There we go. Yep. Okay, so we have it on the table. Is there any highlights you'd like to share about this, or?
Highlights. Yes, I guess I'll go through the highlights. As you can see, the yellow, through the mayor, as you can see, yellow is what I am proposing to change in our fee schedule for the building department starting January 1st, 2020. Just go through them if that's okay. Maybe everybody already understands it easily. I hope they do, but we'll kind of go through as well. So a deposit for a final inspection, pre-occupancy deposit refund. I'm asking to increase that from 500 to 1,000. There are a few individuals in our municipality today who have moved into their home before they require hurricane occupancy. They are aware that there is a fine or a fee, and they seem to be ignoring it or not too worried about it. So I thought if we raised it a little bit more, it might draw their attention to it. Moving into a home without an occupancy I'm not sure how it would affect our insurance, because we have not given them permission to move into the home. But yet I haven't acted on removing them from the home if I don't do that, right? Which the building code does say, Building Code Act does say they're not supposed to be there, so I should be removing them. So I'm hoping this will help that. Okay. Deposits towards building applications, I rarely see ones over these values, so I'm saying let's remove them from the fee and make it a simple fee that everybody knows that this is what they owe when they come in for an application. That fee is refundable once they take out their building permit. The only time they would lose that fee is if they had me or our staff do the calculations and the building code review, and then they call in and say, you know, we finally got quotes from everybody, it's just out of our ballpark, we can't do this project. So in other words, we put time into it, so we want to collect some time back. Okay. Demolition permit, I'm going to, re-inspection fee, I've reduced that to $75, but I've made it clear after 2 inspections, so I'll do 2 inspections. With each inspection, we leave a report, a written report that outlines what needs to be done. Some people are choosing to ignore the written report and call us back for a 2nd, 3rd, 4th inspections and not corrected the issues. So I'd like to put a fee in there that if you're not going to pay attention to our decisions, we're not going to keep coming back here for free. Demolition permit I'm reducing to $100. I feel we don't need the $150 to cover what we do for a demolition permit. Decommissioning of septic systems, reducing that to $100 as well. Usually the two go hand in hand. Residential fees. Okay. Oh, inspection of permit over 4 years old too, yes. So we receive a lot of letters from lawyers, of course, and individuals to review their building before they review the property before they purchase it. And quite often they'll go out saying that there are open building permits that are back to 2006, 2008, you know, in that neighborhood. I know there were fees collected for that, but those fees are all gone, and we're trying to, this fee would try to recoup some of the cost of us going out there and doing inspection on buildings that they should have been inspected long ago. The Building Code Act does state that the individual who has the permit is responsible to call for the inspections. So they should have called us and had an inspection long ago. They didn't. So I'm asking to change that. We're no longer doing that as a free service. Moving ahead.
Just explain the finals. That's what we would have to go, correct?
Well, it could be a final. We actually go out and framing inspections have not been completed on some buildings. Usually it's a small garage, accessory building of some sort. There are a few homes though that haven't had their framing done when we go out there. Insulation inspections, occupancy inspections, and finally final. Final actually is not required by the Building Code Act on residential homes, but it is a requirement that the homeowner send a letter in or something in writing saying that the building is final. Occupancy is required. So if you didn't pass your occupancy, you cannot final the building. Right now, with the majority of our property turning over, we're doing a lot of these inspections, going out and inspecting stuff that's old. Okay. So the building permits themselves, residential, new, and additions. So I'm just changing the wording a little bit, adding additions there, so that I can charge square footage on additions. Before, additions were charged by the thousands. This is allowing me to charge it by the square footage. I think it's a little fair to both people. I don't have to disagree with what you think your addition's gonna cost you, because everybody lowballs me, and I try to be reasonable, but at the same time, they're thinking I'm highballing them. So this should make it a little bit more agreeable during that stage. So I'm looking at reducing that to 60 cents a square foot rather than 65. I have some charts in here I can go through and explain how I came up with that figure a little later on. Okay. So residential additions, I'm omitting that. I won't need it anymore. Residential renovations, I'm adding the terms all floors and basements in there, but I'm keeping the cost the same. Accessory buildings, small buildings, we're reducing that to 35 cents, or I'm proposing to reduce that to 35 cents a square foot from 40. Agricultural buildings over 6,458 square feet, I'm reducing that from 25 to 15. The reason for this is those buildings require engineering, and we usually are pushing the engineer to take responsibility for most of the structural inspections. We do the safety inspections. We will do some structural inspections, but it's usually in conjunction with the engineer. So we're not spending as much time on those as previously. Okay. I've changed the wording for silos to include upright and bunker without a roof. So if you're putting up a bunker silo, which is usually just a concrete wall with steel in it, I don't need to be charging you the square footage of the bunker silo area. Unless you're going to put a roof on it, then it's a building. We're going to move to an accessory building. So I wanted to make that perfectly clear in the wording of the permits. Okay. Conditional permits, something new. We were granted, or I was granted to allow conditional permits. So it does have a little bit more work involved rather than just a regular permit. So I'm going to ask for a $100 fee to do that work. And I think that will restrict people to asking for conditional permits if they don't really require one, rather than just, I need a conditional permit. With changes of hands and lawsuits and other requirements, we are getting a lot of requests for the administration to go through building permits or property files to search for septic information, for building drawings, a lot of different requests, and it is taking up a fair bit of time. So I've added in, we would charge a fee for that, $1 a minute, minimum $15 fee to do that search for you. Sewage fees, I've reduced the private sewage disposal system with daily flows between 4,500 and 10,000 to 500 from 550. Doesn't take a lot more to inspect this. So there's my recommendations to reduce the fees. Go to the next slide, please, Julie. That's the end. Oh, sorry, then it's the next attachment. I did send them all in separate attachments. Kept you busy clicking back and forth through the screen. So I have 3 of these charts in. Okay, I could do that. We could try that first, and then go back and answer some other questions if we have to. So we'll just skip to the summarization chart.
I'm recommending you go to the financial information section of the report, which summarizes the financial impact of each of those
Oh, it's
3
right in the
scenarios,
report.
as opposed to going through the detail of each 3 scenarios.
Sure.
You can just talk to them, to the
Okay.
places.
Yep.
Hopefully. If I don't see
And
the
then we
stuff.
can go to detail
If we need to? Okay.
Yep.
So the financial impact, here we are. Revenue of existing, that's 2019, which was a good year for us. Revenue so far, $413,939. Our expenses right now are $294,670. We still have some some time in there, but we're very close. That gives us a surplus of $119,269. Okay. Scenario one is staying at 65 cents a square foot. I based this on the actual square footage for 2019, so I'm saying next year will be exactly the same as this year. So if I stay at 65 cents a square foot, but I do those other reductions I was talking about, homes are our largest income, so if I do everything else, reduce the building permits for accessory buildings, everything else, this would mean my revenue would drop to $3,770,000. My expenses, I kept them the same, because it's the same year, 2,940. Gives me a surplus of 82,000, and that's a decrease of 36,000. Still a fair surplus. Surpluses are allowed underneath the Building Code Act, but we are supposed to run as close to even as possible. So at the same time, you don't want to run dead zero in case there's an issue come up. So scenario two changes it, all the single-family dwellings to 60 cents a square foot, drops our revenue to $452. Expenses stay the same, gives us a surplus $66,782. Decrease from the existing rates for $52,487. Scenario three was dropping it down to 55 cents a square foot. This reduced the revenue down to $3,045,555. Expenses stayed the same. Had a surplus of almost 51,000. I'm going to start rounding these numbers. Decreases the interest rate of almost 68,000. The reason why I went to 60,000 or 60 cents a square foot again is I'm not sure what next year will be like. There is part of the Building Code Act that allows me to have a surplus of money in there. The OBOA recommends that the surplus is somewhere between 2 and 3 years of your budget. I believe my existing surplus right now is still about 1.5 years, so there's still recommended room in there. And so that's why I'm recommending 60 cents. I guess if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions? Brian?
Surprise. My apologies.
All right, challenge taken. So how does the overall scenario compare to prior to joint services? Like, I understand the rates went up when we joined the joint services
Group.
game. How does this overall compare to the rates prior to that exercise?
I cannot answer that. I apologize. I never looked into our rates
I guess
previously.
where I'm going with that is I've heard a number of complaints that our rates went through the roof when we joined that conglomeration to match another partner in that scenario. Have we, now that we've backed out of that, have we brought, with this scenario, have we brought the rates back to where they were prior?
I have not compared those, so I can't say yes or no, but we're not running the same department we were back then either.
I understand that, but I'm
We have an
wondering.
extra staff, 2 staff now in the building department that
And I guess-
weren't there before.
Yeah, and I guess what I'm trying to flush out here is, what's the impact to the residents overall? Like, is it, within a small margin, or have the rates stayed high, or was that just a perception? I mean, I looked to your advice as to, was that just a perception that the rates went through the roof, or maybe
I
the city?
apologize, we do not have details.
We don't have the exact numbers, but we wear low compared to our comparables in the area. So this doesn't bring it all the way back for sure, because we've staffed up more. There's a lot more requirements than there was 5 years ago when we went, so.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, we need to look at long-term, with the activity that's going on right now, there's a lot more vulnerability, so it's important to build up the reserve. We don't seem to be going through the housing maybe recession, you might call it, that's going on south of us because we're still fairly affordable. But we have to be prepared for that. So we pulled back some. Is this the right number? We may have to review it again next year. That's why we put 55 cents per square foot in there as a comparator. I would say we were likely, I'm thinking 35 or 40 cents was the number back 5 years ago.
Yeah,
So
prior
if
to
you
the,
inflate that out, you're likely, you'd be 50 cents or 48 to 50 right now.
Right.
If you, but anyway, the other thing is that there wasn't as much legal activity in the building department as there is today going on. We've got some files that we are, building without a permit that we're chasing a bit, and so that has to come out of here too. So, and those costs, $20,000 to $30,000 a file is not unheard of at all.
Right.
To take it to the system.
I have a couple others if I could.
Sure, and then Barb, and then.
Unless Bev wanted to add to that.
Well, I was just gonna say, I don't know the fees, but I don't know the budget back before either,
right.
so we'd compare those.
So the one question I had two here that are directly linked to your new rates. The one was on the renovations. Why not, you had explained why you went to the square foot rate for additions, and that makes total sense to me. Why wouldn't you do the same thing for renovations? Instead of getting somebody to, because you're gonna run into the same, or I'm sure you do run into the same thing. I think my renovations are gonna cost this, you're saying, no, they're gonna cost this. Why not go to square footage and say, this is what your rate is for the area you're renovating?
I would like to do that, but I find it difficult because it depends what people are renovating, how much they're renovating.
You're renovating a room, there's a square footage, and now
There is a square footage, but if all you're doing is really coming in and putting down insulation and drywall, that does require a permit. And if I charge a square footage, it may be out of balance in my favor. Then again, if you're renovating your kitchen, I charge you by the thousands. It's probably in my favor.
yeah. I imagine.
It's one of those things where it's hard to come up with, and
Yeah, and I'm sure everybody calls you when they're doing renovations.
I'm sure they do.
So the other question I had was the ag rates for it's either $25 a square or 25 cents a square foot. What were those rates again prior? Those specific rates, what were they prior to the joint services? Because I've heard that complaint loud and clear too.
I imagine you have. I can tell you that, in my personal opinion, we are performing a lot more inspections on agricultural property, a lot more diligently than previously. Requirements of the code have definitely came up a lot on agricultural buildings, so I do know we're putting a lot more time into those than before. So I believe, I wasn't there before, so.
So I understand that, but it doesn't really answer my question. Maybe the CEO. can
Which
help.
we don't have that information in front of us, but
Okay,
we could get that.
sure, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay.
That is all. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Barb, then Mark.
Through the chair, thank you. So one of my questions was similar to the deputy mayor was, we go back and we don't have the information in front of us to compare to pre-joint building services. And we did hear loud and clear, the significant jump in rates. I wanted to make sure that whatever number we land on though is in line with our current costs, what we anticipate now that we're doing more enforcement, because that comes with a cost, a legal cost. We also have more people to provide better service, so we can justify that. But if we were to go back to what it was pre-building services and factor in cost of living and consumer price index, the construction pricing increase, where are we in line with that? And, because we don't want to go back too far, because we need to factor in the cost of living over 3 years. And I guess the urgency of passing this bylaw, maybe we need just a little bit more information to bring us at a comfort level, whether it's 60 cents or 55 cents. Maybe we defer passing the bylaw unless there's some critical timing, until we can get that information to satisfy where were we before joint building services, and where does this bring us today, and what do we really truly need today? Because I don't want to shortchange the building department, because they're doing a great job going out and trying to catch up on all those the bylaw, you know what I'm talking about, the words, infractions, thank you very much. I'm just wondering if we should defer the passing of the bylaw and perhaps the scenario until we have that information.
I'll just add quick, there's no bylaw on this meeting.
It's just a report.
Public meeting.
Yeah.
The meeting and then.
So if I may, with the public meeting tomorrow, could that information be available to share with the people who may be asking those questions? I probably won't be able to make the public meeting, but I would, and then when it comes back to council, we have that information and we can decide whether it's scenario 2 or scenario 3 or somewhere in the middle.
Okay. Yes, I believe in discussion with our treasurer that that will be available tomorrow. I will honestly say when I was doing this reduction in fees, I was not looking at previous 3 years ago, 4 years ago. I was looking at my budget, how much it was costing me to run this department, and how I could reduce the fees and make sure I had a little cushion in there, or hopefully a little cushion. The building industry can change in a dime, a moment, so that's what I was trying to perform. I was not trying to get back to fees of previous one-person building department. We are a totally different building department with total different requirements. That's where I was aiming.
Okay, thank you. Oh, and Mark.
So, and sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I should add in there is no real urgency to this bylaw. The only thing is I was hoping to have it in effect as of January 1st. It's a nice clear cut line. January 1st, the fees will change. Same as our development fees. January 1st, I charge different fees.
Thank you. Your follow-up?
Thank you. So I agree that I don't see that these scenarios would be out of line, and you've factored in all of the costs associated with, you know, the operations of your department today. It's not 3 or 4 years ago. We have to factor that in. Our rates were significantly lower than our counterparts. We hadn't increased them. We perhaps were doing ourselves a disservice by having them extremely low. But I thank you. If we can get that information before we actually pass the bylaw, I think that will satisfy a lot of the questions at the table, and then we can make that decision with more information. So thank you for all of the scenarios. It really was helpful.
Martin?
Through the chair, Good morning, Bev. When I read this at home, the first question that came to my mind was the actual fees. I was just wondering when I was initially read it, are they based, and I think you've answered the question anyway, but the first question was, are these in line? Are these in line close to other municipalities, or are they provincial dictated? Like I saw the 2 new ones. Is anything dictated by the province through the building code with these fees?
The Building Code Act states that it shall be ran, or it can be ran, totally on fees of the builders, or fees collected from the builders. In other words, I don't have to go to the coffers of the taxpayers. I would prefer that myself. I'm sure you would prefer that. I would like to keep that. That's why I'm looking to have that little buffer in there, that if we hit a downturn for 6 months or a year, I don't have to come to you and add extra fees to the taxes. As far as comparable, I did put a comparable chart in there for 2019, the very end. This will make us the lowest again in the municipality. There is no guidelines in the Building Code Act to say how much you shall pay your building inspectors or what fees you shall charge. It just says you shall do it and do it appropriately. I think the wording in the Building Code Act that you're allowed to carry a surplus gives you surplus, gives you room to add a little bit more. I know the larger cities, their surplus is massive compared to us. But you can see as far as Hanover, it's kind of a one-sided thing because I do not know, most of these fees were set because of the joint building services. And as far as I know, I have not heard anybody claiming or saying they were going to change their fees. They do have to post it in the public to do that, and I haven't noticed any of the other ones, so I imagine we are coming at least lower than everybody in our area.
Thank you.
I apologize for that, I did read it, but
That's
fine. You did say though, at the very beginning, there's some people that aren't following the guidelines, like moving in when they shouldn't. So basically, these fees are township specific then, like for what you see here?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. If I may?
They are township specific, but they are being used in other townships as well. Some are. I know Chatsworth has a $1,000 fee for an occupancy.
The only other comment was from what Deputy Mayor said about the square footage. It'd be kind of hard to do anything else but that, because if you have a kitchen reno at a square footage price, you couldn't do assessment, like taxes at the one conference, there was a seminar saying there was assessment by the quality of the work or just by square footage, and they said the square footage is unfair. So if you're going into a kitchen rental and you're just putting cheap counters on, or you're going top marble, like there's that level of money that you could be charging for the kind. Would you want to even be bothered going into that, or just do square footage, or? Because it would mean more money, and you might be assessed with what the renovation is, right?
I've followed what other municipalities have done in the past. That's the reason why it's there. The Building Code Act does state that if you put a figure on the application and sign it, I have no right to question it, really. I usually will. If you put down $10,000 and you're renovating your own home, I'm going to come back and say, we have an issue here. But if they come back and tell me $100,000, and I think it's going to be $130,000, $150,000, I'll accept the $100,000. I will not get into an argument over it.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
Yeah, fine.
My only thing is, when you're talking about that, is that what job is different between a $10,000 kitchen versus a $100,000 kitchen for you? You do the same inspection for the $10,000 as you do the $100,000. So just because the guy wants to upgrade to the best of everything, why should he pay more when you don't do any more work than the guy that just does the $10,000 kitchen? Like, to me, I don't see a break-even point there. So it's your services that we're charging for, and that's all it should be. If the guy wants to spend X amount of dollars, that should be his right.
Okay. Thank you. Yep, good point. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so we have a motion before us to receive this and to allow for the public meeting. All in favor? And that is carried. Thanks, Doug.
Welcome.
Liam, so we'll move on to the, you want to take a quick break, or do you want to go right on to the, I heard a yep. Okay, recess.
Sorry, please.
Please.
He said, yeah, I said.
Yep, please.
Please, yes.
Yes.
Please, yes.
Either way,
The vote
recess.
is still in progress, it seems.
Yeah, it'll be over by the time we get back.
Like, we were still in, yeah, we were still in.
No, I would mention that, because I don't remember.
Right.
So Mike
Still at 6
for the CBB position for us. But they were fine.
I think I said Friday, so 2:15 when I called and missed it.
Oh,
Yeah,
give them
yeah.
a list of people coming and
But,
making
yeah,
sure
we're looking at getting that, okay, great, yep, and,
Because I figured you got two types of contact.
yeah.
That was not the right.
No, but we got, you know,
Oh, okay, that's big Dave. That is big Dave. Are you ready?
you're proud, yeah. Yeah, you know, I only have a few people that first bought, thought Christmas, silly, already, stuff like that. And then when they were driving through town, they noticed the fee, and that's what they were doing. So they did,
There's one color. And
the right one, yeah.
You take it and, well, they do it, always buy the small.
No.
Always. And then let her return it for whatever. Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I learned that
Yep.
lesson one year.
just, yeah. But, you know, with the school, school work, like, it's a simple solution. School that Linda worked at, you know,
Oh dear.
they have separate parking lots. So,
And they do have a left and a right parking lot, like they do have one on each side.
yeah, but they've got lots of right up front there, like that. And this one has, Credit Meadows, I think is what it's called. This has a separate parking lot, just off to the side.
They don't really need that deep a yard in front, but I don't know whether the states are gonna put an addition there.
So parking lot's not gonna hurt for them.
No, exactly.
And they
Exactly.
just gravel, you know, but they, no cars go in, it's staff and buses go in the one way.
Right.
And it's got a separate entrance.
Exactly. And let's just say we're in a new reality and parents are hovering helicopter parents.
Yep,
But you still have to plan, and let's say it's not really a shortage plan.
yep, no. And you know what, there was times when my boys were in that school, that there were cars would line up down the road during that weather.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
yeah,
But, I think things are moving in the right direction.
yeah, yeah.
And then keeping offer.
She's got it up and down, yeah. This last couple of months has been a rough one.
So it wasn't just the flu, it seems like it's.
There's something, and they don't know what it is. It's, her memory hasn't come right back. So, yeah, it is, it is. So, yeah, we'll keep it there though.
Yeah, yeah. Oh.
Yes.
I don't know,
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So,
She actually wanted me to put up.
oh, yeah.
I said, you know what? They're entertaining you. So, they can get hold of me if they want. So,
And I
thanks. Yeah.
same way, but it's good to have, just
No, it's a
think
back
about
to
the
ten.
things that you can mention about the day.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
I figured that. Yeah.
There was a little parade, it was public driven, which is why it should be. Yep. Same with lighting. Public driven.
We all agree with
Yep. Yep. Scans all around, oh, I know. Yep.
Anyway.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
you might not have, I was gonna ask, did you have the day in court with, the people with Little House?
Yeah, no, some is, I should,
I can imagine.
he appreciated people.
You need to be there by 12:30.
Yeah, we're
You don't have to
He's
be
got a
there
lot,
so
he's got a
short.
lot of
Public.
people.
Is that
Oh, yeah.
lawyer thing?
Yeah, you had that problem.
So I always,
Request for a Saturday.
I can't
Carriage for
It starts with 1.
Yeah.
Wants people to go.
No.
I mean, by the time, but
Oh,
the
yeah.
problem is, you
All his other projects.
have to get back. But if you can, get dropped off at the depot,
Oh,
have them come back and you drop them at
Do you have any idea how long
and
it'll
you
be
can
before
hop
it might
off
come up again?
yeah,
school, and you don't have to trek all the way back.
yeah.
And
I'll let you know.
I'm not really.
And that'll save like
Yeah,
45
well,
minutes.
yeah,
You
but
don't
I'll
really matter. It
probably-
takes longer to get back.
Well, you know,
That's good.
if it's a long way, it'll be a long time, we'll think the charter, it's gonna be great.
So remember last year we
Oh,
were
but
making do with,
everybody's lawyers,
I don't know what we
the
used.
10 out of 10. They're lawyers,
Oh,
and
yeah.
get on the way, I was a big charter archivist, so probably
If
do it.
you have a 10-foot pole,
One project for when it goes with that.
well,
Yeah.
you can certainly 9, but
Exactly.
I'm wondering if you can bring it with you.
Yeah.
I'll let you know it'll be, 5:30,
And
so
then
30
they're
minutes.
on.
No, I should,
Okay,
that's not.
that way we don't have to scramble and get
Yeah.
with the guy and say, well, what can we?
I'll make sure I do.
I think we duct taped, didn't we duct
Yeah,
tape
we-
two poles
I think
together,
we
Jim?
did. Which portal?
You were,
Yeah,
but
we did.
yeah, you helped me with
Broom
that.
handles and something.
Oh, I
else.
know, but if it's
No, I
like
can do
one
that.
pole, then.
I'll make sure I bring my truck.
Okay.
I didn't think so.
No, you're not gonna come to school? Okay.
And I am honest, I told him that I would charge my eyes closed.
Right.
Then you
Okay,
get-
I'll say no to your regret, and, you're not there on Saturday.
They had,
I'm curious.
they had a opportunity to
then
move it in,
pull
and
it
if I
in.
didn't allow them to move it in on that opportunity, they wouldn't get it in till next year. So I said, I'm gonna be out there with the alignments on.
Yeah.
As long as I don't have other complaints, we won't have a problem.
No, I didn't think it was.
I talked to Dennis, I don't know if you ever got the Herald.
Yeah.
It's a gigantic ad, the whole thing for it. And I phoned Dennis, they took Saturday. So I phoned that Dennis, and I turned that on.
Yeah, no.
Short recess.
That's all. The only thing that.
I read that email, you're talking, I meant after.
There's
There's extra, those are the data science for, and you know, we do it.
I didn't think so.
On you guys, jumped off.
Yep.
You-
Yeah,
Whatever.
yep, that's right.
So I could probably take that, bring down the chair. There's one laying on a table. A huge pole. Yeah, just like that. And I'm wondering if we could have had that. Well, I've been down looking for the van, with Lisa to look for the van. Yeah, I've never seen it. It must be down there from the lobby or something. Ooh, I go down there from that, CS. That's why I'm here. So I'll put it in my car, if we need to break, we don't.
Yeah, the.
Oh, that's our battery. And I'll return it back on, what do we want it for? I don't know, because we're getting material, I mean, we're good, but the wagon is really tight, so it's probably the walking, because we've got, we haven't heard from any of the, new board, but we've got Alex Ross, potentially, Andy Lennox, Christine Robinson, and Bill Walker, council. Yeah, the smaller wagon. Oh, that's not, no, he doesn't have this one.
Like asking for his money.
Code. And
Yeah.
Yeah, just started, so, yeah.
And I'm really glad
What's that? Oh, just, or you mean like old? Yeah.
Probably one of the particular time at the coffee shop, he mentions it.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I guess that's it for recess. We'll move on to Liam's reports. So, did we remove this one, didn't we? No. So it's the, to receive the, staff report FYN 2019-050, the 2020 budget, and approve the budget as presented. Mover and seconder. Martin? And Barbara. Liam?
Okay, so the draft budget being presented has a return for taxation of $7,384,704, an increase of $722,555 from 2019, which is about a 4% blended tax rate increase. So I'd like to go to the attachment 2, which summarizes the changes from the last time the council received this until this time. So on November 13th, there was a 4% blended tax rate increase that was presented, and then there was discussions at that meeting, which brought it down to 3.9%. And that was that number that was presented at the public information meeting, which there was no public comment or attendance at that meeting. So, and then subsequent to that public meeting, the public works manager looked into the cost of replacing $294 with the used vehicle, the used unit, determined that $51,000 wasn't sufficient, and $65,000 was a more reasonable number for a used unit. So reflecting that change, putting $14,000 back in, brings us back up to the 4% blended tax rate impact.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, comments? Brian?
Is it too much of a coincidence that $14,000 brings it exactly to 4% again? Not wanting to be cynical,
It's
but.
just coincidence.
Okay, it's a coincidence, that's nice. I just want to note too, maybe you already know this, Liam, but the county has a draft budget of 1.46, I think, was it, John?
Yeah.
And you had assumed a 2% at the county level?
I assume 2%, yes.
Right. So that may open up some more room for us if we're determined to stay at the 4%. Then $14,000. Wouldn't that be coincidental? Yes. So anyway, I just bring that to your attention because maybe there's potential there to invest some more. You know, if we occupy that room that the county has allowed us, if ultimately they end up at the 1.5 or thereabouts, there's some potential there to invest more into infrastructure, which, as you've indicated quite rightly, we are falling behind on and have for a number of years. So I very much want to retain the ability to stay at the 4% and occupy the blended rate of 4% and occupy that extra room if the county vacates it. Did I make myself clear? Or sort of thereabouts?
I understand.
Yeah. What trucks cost, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
So it's a coincidence, and I agree with you. 4%.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the county, if we keep that down to the, say, about a 1.5, that does leave room, and I think putting money in our infrastructure is definitely worthwhile. Way to go. Any others, Martin?
If there is a surplus that way, it's a good thing, because we're supposed to be adding 1% for infrastructure on top of it, so we make it 5, so we're not doing that, or whatever that number was, so, yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I see you guys figuring something out. Go ahead.
So unfortunately, it's just not a matter of the 1.46 equating to 0.5 because of the way the weighting between us and the county and the education works out. So I can't give you the exact number right now.
I understand.
So I would suggest if council is comfortable with the information in the budget as is and sees an opportunity possibly to, and they're looking to keep the tax rate, blended tax rate increase around 4 or 3.9 or whatever it is, I guess I would possibly suggest that if they want to approve this in principle, and then we defer and do final approval on December 18th, and in which case I can bring back an analysis with update the blended tax rate impact analysis with the county information, if that's available.
Barb, thank you.
Through there, so I think what we're saying, or what Deputy Mayor said, and I would have to agree, is that in the past, when we're unsure, we're guessing at certain funding, and we're guessing at what we're getting from the government, we're guessing at what the county is going to be. Once all of that rolled in, final, the rate adjusted accordingly, and usually adjusted downward. And I think what the Deputy Mayor is saying is that regardless of where the county comes in, unless it was like up, over 2%, that we want to stay at 4. We don't want to adjust it down. Is that what you had in mind? So that we're authorizing today that if the county comes in at 1.46 or 1.5, we still want to take that 0.5 that you estimated and set it aside.
I think we get that. I think it's important for you to know what that financial number is.
Sure, and it's important for the public.
That we could shove towards, kind of manage your assets long-term and investing in renewing or more. Exactly.
What is?
Yep. Any other comments or questions? Brian?
I guess the other thing was the county, they're not going to have a final budget meeting until, I think it was February 18th.
Yeah.
This year. It's delayed quite a bit because of the uncertainty of upper tier, upper levels of government, where they're going to land. So, I certainly agree with Councillor DeBreen, and I appreciate your suggestion to do what you said you were going to do.
So their recommendation was to maybe do a friendly amendment that we approve in principle.
Yep.
Does that help you? And then but you're still not going to have the final numbers December 18th, so
Let's see what William says.
I guess what I'm thinking right now is, if you approve the budget as it states, you won't be able to approve the tax rates anyway until the end of June, once we have all the final information from all the various levels and do our tax ratios and that sort of thing. So, I'm just wondering, because if I bring back December 18th, I still won't have the final county number. I will only have another estimated draft number. So,
We might as well proceed.
So, I guess I'm going to suggest maybe we proceed as is, and with that, knowing that stipulation, that I guess when it comes to setting the tax rate, we could set an extra, I don't know, $14,000 aside into an infrastructure levy contribution when it comes to setting the tax rate.
I'm good with that, yeah.
No, it sounds like
Thank
that.
Just on that whole discussion, what is 1% at the county? And I know we have to replicate it down to what it is here when we get here, but.
178,000?
I think so.
That number comes to mind, but it could be wildly optimistic, I don't know.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I just want to clarify, the reason that it's not an easy number just to come up with, because yes, it's 1.46% of the county. However, our share of the county's budget is not exactly the same as everybody else's. And then compared to our share of education and our tax rate, there's lots of variables that go into that.
So it might be less than 14.
It might be less than 14,000, yes.
Coincidentally, it may be just another rounded number. Barb?
2%
Yes, true.
than what we were guessing.
Okay, any further comment or questions? All in favor of the motion? That is carried, thank you. Yeah. Information technology, you have a motion before you to upgrade some computers. The mover, Martin, seconder. Michael? What would you like to tell us about computers?
Okay, so the Windows 7 support is ending January 14th, 2020. So it is recommended that we update those systems in order to maintain the integrity, the data integrity. So in the budget, I had noted dollars for administration computers. However, there wasn't any funds for all the other computers in our organization. So we got a quote for that, which is $7,694.85 plus HST. And as the cost of updating, I had the budget of $5,000. The actual cost came in at, where is it here, $7,404.80. So I'm recommending that we go ahead and update the remaining systems and fund that through the modernization grant, as well as the amount that we're over budget of $25,3512 on the existing system updates.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, comments? Martin?
Just with, if you're replacing the computers, they're still fairly recent, it's just the programming. Would we repurpose them somewhere else, like giving them to the library or something?
Most of the, I'm not so sure. I'd say 90% of the computers are just having their operating system updated, and we're adding, some of the computers then are getting additional RAM as well to improve their speed. And I believe there's probably about 3 computers that cannot be upgraded to a new operating system, so it's actually a replacement. So their old systems are essentially obsolete. You wouldn't want them redeployed.
Okay, thank you.
Barbara?
And just to follow Councillor Shipston's comment, there was discussion at the library. Can the library get in on this upgrade, or, I mean, I know they're part of Infinity Solutions now, and I know that there was talk at the library board that there would be, they were looking at that, and I just wanted to make sure that that conversation had been open, and that way, if there are replacement computers, that we keep the patron computers in mind, because they're falling off. They're getting very dated. They can't be upgraded anymore either.
Go ahead, Lynn.
So I just wanted to verify that this report addresses of the systems that are currently operating Windows 7, which we are saying they, in my opinion, must be upgraded before January 14th. There's no systems at the library that are affected that are operating Windows 7 already. So we have the librarian has proceeded with discussions with Infinity on a separate quote, because that budget did have some funds for upgrades in 2019, and I believe in 2020 they have some more dollars as well. I'm not sure the exact number, maybe 4,000. I think it was 2,500 in 2019. So I've tried to keep those issues separate. This is just this is organization-wide, but the library doesn't have any computers that are operating Windows 7, so they're not part of this number.
Good. Okay. Any other questions or concerns? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, next one is need a mover and seconder, and this would be the staff report with the wage grid and cost of living increase of 1.7 for January 1st. Mover and seconder. Martin moves it, and Jason seconds it. Any comments on that, Lynn?
I will just point out that the policy said that we consider the cost of living for the province of Ontario from period of October to October each year. So that rate this year is 1.7%. So the policy says that the grid could be updated by the cost of living, subject to approval of council. So I'm bringing forward council the fact that the rate is 1.7% and for them to consider whether or not to update the grid accordingly.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Brian?
Liam, the province has decreed that public servants should not be, or should be restrained to approximately 1% increase. Now, I know that doesn't apply to municipalities. Was any consideration given to restraint in that respect, despite what the province has said?
Go ahead.
No, I didn't consider that 1% directive. I was following our policy, which is to consider the cost of living.
Thank you. Okay. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? That's carried. Now motion for about, this one's the cemeteries, FIN 2019-053. Mover and seconder, please. Barbara and Martin? Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
So it's the municipality has the ability to become the care maintenance fund, trust fund trustee for any cemetery boards within its municipal borders. So in October of 2018, the TD Canada Trust sent letters that they were to all its customers that it was no longer going to be trustee, so it's getting out of that line of business. So we were approached by a cemetery to see whether or not, if we would want to be the trustee. So I brought this report forward for council to consider first the concept of whether or not we would want to be trustees for cemetery boards within our jurisdiction. And then the reason that there's a separate report is for council to consider a specific cemeteries request. So I'm thinking first discussion is, do we want to be the trustees? And then secondary, do we want to be trustee for that cemetery board?
Okay. Questions, comments? Brian?
Liam, is there any speculation on your part as to why TD's getting out of that business? Are they not making any money, or are they hard up, or what?
I have no idea why they would exit from that line of business.
And I guess just to follow up then, other banks, I would presume, continue, or other financial institutions are continuing in that line of work, I would presume. So, I don't know, it seems curious that TD would throw their hands up. I would think it would be a small part of their service, other than it's just another kick in the teeth of small town Ontario.
Great. Any other, Barbara?
Chair, Liam, thanks. The one question that came to mind was, if TD's getting out of the business, what expertise do we have to invest those funds? Do we control the fund that it gets invested in? Is there a standard in the industry? What happens if what are we liable if the fund does poorly? The care and maintenance and perpetual care and maintenance, if it's not making interest, we can't pay it. Like, it's based on the interest earned is then paid for the care and maintenance. If the fund does poorly, what happens?
Looks like they have
Yeah,
an answer.
so I kind of got started into this thing. It was kind of a quagmire of, big banks getting out and another form of downloading in a different way. But anyway, this cemetery that you'll hear about in a few minutes came to us, and so what do we do now? Because we're the last place of resort. There's no governments below us, so it gets fed down to us. So we have some very dedicated community cemetery groups that are wanting to continue to do the same thing. So we've reached out to the credit union, and to be honest, we're just gonna be a kind of mediary and an authority that can stand in here and do it as the banks have done it, kind of thing. And I may stand corrected, Liam may correct that, but we're going to be doing a very little bit of the work, other than kind of pass through, maybe annual audit with the credit union, because the credit union has stepped up and will house the money and take care of it there. And this cemetery group still want to do the good things that they're doing. I mean, these are cemeteries that have some years no interment, some years 2 or 3. So I think it's important for us to support those community arrangements and so on. And anyway, you're going to get started, because I think I agree with you 100%. The banks could be doing this as a community service, but there's not. So praise the Lord, we have the credit union in town that is a local organization.
Thank you. Barb?
So that was my part 2 of, are we gonna partner with another institution? So is this more of a, as you said, pass-through, where we handle funds for other organizations as kind of their treasurer? The Optimist Club or Generation Connection or any other not-for-profit organization. Is this kind of that you're gonna feed the money through and look after the auditing of all that, more than you're going to dictate how it's invested? Oh, and part 3 is, can we take advantage of some of those investment ones for something like this? Like, I don't know what kind of funds we're talking about, but...
Okay.
So, yeah, we would just monitor the account. Like, my expectation is I would just they would report how many interments they have, and they would tell me how much should be going to the account, and I would just make sure that has actually gone in. And the fact that the only thing that comes out is the interest that's earned on it to their account. We would be not involved with their operations or setting of the rates for the cemetery. I would just monitor that a contribution has been made to the account, and that only interest comes out of it.
Okay. Anything else? Martin? Oh, Dave? Okay, Martin?
When I was reading the report, there was one cemetery that wanted, and there was another cemetery that wanted a letter that they were not willing to become trustees. So I think the most important thing here is just one word, that if we have that power, it's only if they request it. That's the point, right? So I'm in total agreement with that. So I think that's the key word in the policy though. So.
Thank you, Dave.
Yeah, the other thing that I don't want you to, we may come back in a year or 2 and say, we're gonna have to take care of the cemetery. I don't want you to think that that's gonna happen, but that's a different piece. Because some of these cemeteries, like we operate the one in Dundalk, but we may have to operate others because the funds run out or there's no community interest to maintain it. That will come too. There's the start of that because community dynamic is changing. So, but this is just more for the people that are managing and doing a good job.
Barb?
So Councillor Shipton actually reminded me of another question is, why would a cemetery require a letter that we will not be providing a service? Is it something to do with they're going to go back to TD and say you have to look after us? And if we're providing the service for someone else, why would we deny permission for another?
And if I might, this is exactly why we kind of brought this forward. So we'd heard from Bethel, and then I got a call for a letter saying we don't want to be involved, and it was the BAO would require a letter if we don't want to be, the Bereavement Authority of Ontario. So they would require a letter if we don't want to be involved, but then when Bethel was brought up, we thought we need to make a decision whether we want to or not, because it's not fair then to say yes to Bethel and not to the other cemetery. So that's why this decision was for us.
Go ahead.
I just want to make sure I understand. So we will not be providing a letter that we deny that?
Not at this time. They're basically waiting for council decision on this.
Okay.
And then I would assume
she didn't realize that we would be open to that. She just thought, I'll get the letter, because they don't wanna do that. Like, she didn't realize that we could or we would be willing. So I would assume that
If this passes.
if it passes, that they will also want to use us. I would assume that's the way it's gonna go, but I don't know.
Thank you.
Maybe the unknown point here was, I think TD gives some deadline.
Yes, they give a
December the
deadline.
16th or something. So there was a whole lot of,
Yeah,
oh my goodness, what do we do?
yeah.
So that's kind of, yeah,
So this,
very
yeah, the
bizarre.
other,
And, again, BOA is the people that are gonna,
yeah, Bereavement Authority in Ontario, they regulate all the cemeteries in Ontario, and we have to report to them. Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
so.
Okay. Not seeing any other questions? All in favor of the motion? And that is carried. Thank you. So then, next, we'll move on to the motion about the Bethel Community Cemetery. Mover and seconder for that, Brian and Barbara. Do we have anything else to add about this one? Yep, go ahead, Liam.
I just want to state that the reason this is coming on specifically for Bethel, and because the Dundalk District Credit Union required us to do a resolution specific to Bethel. So that's why it came forward as a report.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Jim's not here. Next up, we need a mover and seconder for the staff report PW 2019-072, and about the logic controller that's for the wells. Martin will move that. Seconder? Michael? I guess Dave, you're gonna...
yeah, so I'm the water guy today.
Yeah.
So this is, with the implementation of D5, the new well, we've got all this new technology. Now there's some incompatibilities between the old technology of the PLCs and the new stuff. And when we get into looking at, well, what do we do, and they looked at, so to really upgrade it, it's really a total retrofit of replacing some of the PLCs because they're now 15 years old, and electronics, that's a long time. So we're issuing a programming tender and replacement technology tender to look after that and make sure they all talk. Because right now it's taking intervention after hours to really maybe sometimes make D5 talk to D4 and D3. It's like they're talking English and French and they don't understand one another some days. So that's kind of the short story.
Okay. I go by the old John Crosby statement when he was asked if he spoke both official languages, and he said he wasn't fluent in either. So, do we have any questions or comments on this? Seeing none, all in favor? Yeah. And I think when we get to the point of D6, I think that should be something that we just build into the budget. It's upgrading the others. Yeah. Next, it's 8.4.2, the assumption of Harris subdivision. I need a mover and seconder. Brian will move it, and Jason will second. You need to add anything on that?
Just, it's been a small little subdivision that has been ongoing, development for years, and now it's reached a point of the housing threshold and the servicings that have been completed, such as paving and that sort of thing. So now we're ready to assume it and actually provide municipal services.
Okay, thank you. Comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. 8.4.3, and this will be the bylaw to go with that. We have mover and seconder for that. Martin and Michael? Any questions or comments on the bylaw? Seeing none, all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Okay, Dave, now we're going to move on to your reports. 8.5.1, do I have a mover and seconder? Jason and Brian? Okay, Dave?
So, social services have come to us and, they're using, facilities in Dundalk more, which is a good thing. Because of that increased level of service, we've had discussions of increasing the rate. And, there has been some changes since of ownership of the Erskine Center and so on since the last agreement. So we have cleaned the agreement up. I would indicate that it's in draft right now. I had hoped that the county would have got back to us with, their kind of, gloss over it and anything that they wanted to, fix up. So we're waiting for that and we'll bring that back, for the next council meeting.
Okay. So does this motion need to be? Oh, no, it's just concerned.
Just considering it,
So no,
yeah.
we're good. Okay, Brian, and then Michael?
Dave, is there any material differences other than the different location?
Different location, the amount has gone from 400 to 600 to cover the extra costs of maintenance and cleanup and so on.
But the services themselves
And the
are...
services themselves are, just that they have more caseload.
Yep, thank you.
Michael?
I'm just kinda wondering the cost of cleaning that facility, they clean it every day after use? Like, what's our monthly charge? Like, are we just breaking even on this, or are we actually making some money?
So we're not making money at all. We're contributing about $1,000 a month, to look after the facility. So they're cleaning it once a week. External snow is taken care of by Southeast Gray Community Health Center. But we pay the heat, the hydro, and all that sort of stuff.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. 8.5.2, we need a mover and seconder for that. Martin and Jason? Okay, Dave?
So the agreement is before you, and the only changes that have been made is related to, made some changes in the recitals. There's a change in the inflation factor, so we put in the rate at 1.47 for 2020, and and then
Throw the microphone on there for a second.
oh, sorry.
Okay.
They change in mileage to reflect the fourth quarter of 2019, and it changes like we do here at the office. There is a change in point 6 to reflect boarding fees that are being charged for dog owners. If we have a dog picked up and there's no identity of the dog, it becomes the township's dog. And so we pay $15 a month, that's what was paid before. They tend to be there, longer period of time, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 days, where the dog owner's dog is usually there a short time, a day or two, and they're picked up fairly quickly. So as far as some of the initial kennel costs are maybe not covered, so she wanted to go to 25 per day. And then the responsibilities of the contractor in point 2, we just added text about clarify that kennel inspections shall be documented on the appropriate township forms. That we just wanted to clear that up. So that's only changes in the contract.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments? Barbara?
Forgive me if I don't remember or missed it. What is the increase that we took? Or so compared to the previous contract, now it's going to be $29,670.
So
Was it around 25?
It was cost of living every year added on.
Okay. So that's all that it went up, cost of living?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Seeing nothing further, all in favor? Opposed? Okay, that is carried. And now the mover and seconder for the bylaw. Brian? on the bylaw? All in favor? And opposed? That is carried. 8.5.4, I need a mover and seconder. Jason, move it, and seconder. Martin?
Yep.
Okay, Dave?
So, what we have here is a policy, we had a presentation by Frank Cowan Company, Tony Camisio was here and presented, and we had some discussion about cyber policies. So, we asked the Frank Cowan Company to provide us some sample policies, and this is kind of the start of the process. Pardon you, thought I'd change the department here to Human Resources, because I think this is a Human Resources, this was created by Human Resources. So Kayla has done a lot of work on this policy, and we are bringing forward an information technology, or IT, and mobile device use draft policy, number 83. And it really provides us with some guidance on the do's and don'ts, because there's a lot of people out there trying to do, and in one change we made to the policy, they called them technology engineers. And I thought, Kayla and I had this conversation about what education or what school did they go to be this technology, engineer, where they're just a bit later called it, I think, a hacker, a criminal. And I thought, they're a criminal, like, they're trying to mess us up. So we use that term in both cases instead of, anyway, there are some other policies that we're going to be looking at in the future: security policy, information system disaster recovery and business continuity policy, data backup and disaster recovery policy, and data backup and disaster recovery plan. So Kayla's now working with Infinity, our IT provider, to go through that kind of policy design and creation. That'll be coming sometime in the first quarter, we hope, of 2020. What we have talked about as well is, okay, we got this policy, what do we do with it? And the CAO, I think, needs as much training as likely you will. I mean, we got these little devices that are going into the sky and bringing this information down, but they can be hacked just as well as any other device. So when we do, and I think in here I mentioned a date of January 22nd, cancel that date. We already have a conflict, and that's fine. But we hope to get something in January, February, as far as a visioning session, and that will be kind of in a committee of the whole environment. But part of that will be training on this policy. We think it's really important that everybody has a basis for, well, department heads and supervisors here that use these devices to understand what information technology and mobile draft policy is, this policy is all about, and how we can better manage our data that we deal with on a daily basis, and what we shouldn't process and what we should process, and some of the pitfalls. So that's just kind of a high-level discussion of what this is all about.
Thank you. Martin?
Dave, is this a precursor to getting cyber threat insurance too?
Well,
is that in the process?
Yeah,
along from this?
And we're going to be talking about that this year as well. But we have to have these policies in place to mitigate that too.
Thank you. See nothing further, all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. 8.5.5, need a mover and seconder for that motion. Martin and Brian. Purchase and sale extension.
So these are, the next two are both pretty much the same, but the purchase and sale agreement extension, I mean, some of the problems is we don't have a road constructed, so we're digging into that through the legal side to get road frontage for this one, because they're just to the west, to the east of Listec. So working through that, it took some time to get the survey completed, but we're heading into early in the new year, we're hoping to close on this so they can start development.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried, thank you. And 8.5.6, the bylaw, go with that. Move for seconder, please. Jason and Michael. Any questions or concerns or comments about the bylaw? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. 8.5.7, need a mover and seconder, and this is another purchase and sale extension. Michael? Martin? Okay, Dave?
Same thing on this one. This one would be the same survey processes. Part of the problem here is the traffic circle is part of the property, so the lawyer's working through that. But this one will close in 2020 as well. It may be in the second half of the year, but that's what we're working towards.
Okay, thank you. Comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. 8.5.8, and that would be the bylaw to go with it. Need a mover and seconder. Michael and Jason. Any questions or comments on that? Seeing none, all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. 8.5.9, to accept Jamie's resignation and approve the changes to the administrative and legislative assistant position. Mover and seconder. No. Okay, so we'll move on.
We defer it?
Yeah.
Yes, I think that would be a great idea. Okay, Barb's willing to move that we get rid of you.
I'll second it.
And Martin will second it. I may have phrased that not quite accurately.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jamie's moving on actually the end of this week to Owen Sound, to a deputy clerk's position. We wish you the best. It was good to have you here, and your contributions are greatly appreciated. And to see you moving up and doing that is good to see. So, it's one of those things that I feel is a measure of how we're doing things here with employees, with support, things like that. If it's helping with career moves and things like that nature. So, thank you for the time that you've been here. I will miss pouring coffees with you. We seem to meet in the kitchen once in a while. But I may drop into your new office for a coffee, so we'll be okay. That'll be on Owen Sound time.
All right.
Does anyone else have any comments or questions? Martin?
I just want to say, whenever I've asked for something, he's always been there. It's always been in my docket or he emailed me, so it's good to have that kind of cooperation between us and staff. So I appreciate it because I'm new to the game and I don't know if he was, but he always helped me out, so I do appreciate that. So good luck.
Yep. And don't lose your sense of humor. You need it. Okay, so I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion? Oh, Dave wanted to say something. So we're not really in favor yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I just wanted to, the changes in job description and posting are there. The investing in Canada, that's kind of an update on where that's going, and there's some good progress there with our consultants, and GRCA are really on board. We see that as a great opportunity. The ICIP is a great fit for what we're trying to do with lagoons and trying to get money for less energy or more energy efficient wastewater processing systems. Because as soon as you go to big robust plants without lagoons, you're into high energy requirements. Health and safety risk assessment went through that, so you see a sign up here in the wall that to demonstrate that we want to be a respectful workplace. There's some things that we're going to implement that I'm not really in favor of, but I understand it from the standpoint of protecting employees. We're going to have a sign-in sheet, and we're going to have ways to alert if there is a situation. But, we're gonna be a bit more bureaucratic, we're gonna have a few more locked doors, like maybe the side door will be locked, with a entrance code for employees, so that, this is just, health and safety stuff to protect, employees, which is utmost importance. But it does, shed a bit of a, we're dealing with a low percentage of our population that wanna go this way, and, anyway, that's kind of the process we went through, to deal with these kind of things. Community Foundation, Grey Bruce, that's kind of been dragging on, and, so we've got a meeting set up, and I wanted to update on that. And then the visioning session, it's likely gonna be in February now, but we'll get a date that'll work for everybody, we'll.
Thank you. Okay, so all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Thanks, Dave. Okay, yes. Sure. Just in case, Barb moves, we'll pass noon. Seconder? Okay, Martin's the mover seconder for the day. It's good. Any discussion? All in favor? And that is carried. Thanks, Barb. 8.6.1, I need a mover and seconder. It's for bylaw 2019, staff report and to consider bylaw 2019-178. Brian? And Martin? Okay, Clint, do you have anything to enlighten us with on this one?
Not unless you have any questions.
Okay, and do we? Not seeing any questions. Okay, all in favor of the motion? And that is carried. 8.6.2, that is the bylaw for that. Jason will move it, and Barb will second it. Nothing to add for the bylaw?
Nope.
Okay, I don't see any questions from council. All in favor? And that is carried. 8.6.3, the mover and seconder, and that will be to receive the staff report and consider bylaw 2019-179. Mover and seconder. Brian? And Jason? Hi, Clint.
Unless there's any questions.
Okay, are there any questions? Okay, all in favor of the motion? And that is carried. Mover and seconder for the bylaw 2019-179. Jason and Martin? Oh, I thought you did.
No, no.
Okay. Oh, Michael did? Okay. We'll go with Mike. I just always thought you had your hand up. Huh?
No, that's me.
Yeah, okay, that's right. Please use your mic. Had to get that in once. Any questions or comments on the bylaw? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you, that's carried. 8.6.5, need a mover and seconder, and that's for staff report and considering the bylaw 2019-136. Brian? And Michael? Hi, Clint. Your turn again.
This one has been through a long process. It was actually over probably a year and a half when they came through with the initial zoning application, and they applied for their site plan this year. There's been lots of back and forth, I guess, with the applicant and getting the correct plans, drainage plans specifically for the property, and then having our engineers review them. So Triton has actually reviewed the drainage plan, this development will actually lessen the impact of the existing drainage on neighboring properties. So it's actually, when this goes forward, the statement implies there will be less water there than there is now in terms of effects on neighboring properties.
Okay. Michael? Right.
That's due to, they put the drainage into the storm sewers, right, that connected the property?
Not 100% of the drainage, but right now none of it goes into there. So I'll say the front 2/3 is now going to be directed into the storm sewer, is my understanding of how that works. So if you figure that out, right now it all flows one way, and now 2/3 of it's going to flow into the storm sewer.
Okay, thank you. Brian and Barbara? No, Brian? Barbara?
Answered my question.
Just a quick question, when that happens and it's going to the storm sewers, does that affect our wastewater capacity, our ability to, no, it's insignificant in the grand scheme of things?
It shouldn't go to wastewater. Now, to say that, there is infiltration, and we're addressing those issues, but any stormwater, in actual fact, we're already seeing, because of the tighter stormwater system we have on Main Street now, with the new installation, we're seeing some better results, so, yeah, that's a...
Which could increase our capacity for wastewater treatment.
Correct, correct.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that'll be years to come.
Yeah.
That's years to come, because there's a 3-year rollback that we look at historical for calculating capacity.
Okay, Michael?
In follow-up to that, I'm just kind of wondering, what's the criteria that allows property to drain into there versus not? I come from a resident that we have water issues in my backyard. How do those people get to hook into the drain versus dumping water onto the ground? Like, is there a bylaw how it works? Who can and who can't?
So there is I wouldn't say there's a bylaw, but this is more of a question for Jim, because he's right on top of this. There's a connection available at the property line on Main Street. If you want to hook into it, you can hook into it. Now, you can put your storm sheet flow water, if you want to catch basin it and put it into that, you can do that. You could put some pump into it to pump the storm water that comes into your basement. But as far as like any other water in the house that's, your kitchen, obviously your dishwasher, your
Gray water.
any gray water, your clothes, all that's gotta go to the wastewater system. But anything that is groundwater related can go into the storm system.
But what about off of the new construction area? I think that's what Michael was asking about, something like...
Off the new construction area, if there is stormwater access available, yes, but there's a lot of streets that just have catch basins of the street.
Right.
And we try to, manage that the best we can. We don't want sheet flow, obviously, across sidewalks, that's a whole other issue. But any streets that have recent construction, Young Street, Main Street, should be okay.
Okay, thank you. Barbara? And then
So if we've this addressed drainage concerns from the beginning, and they've addressed that through engineering and proper storm water management, it's going to benefit neighboring houses. But where we didn't identify drainage issues and allowed for development or zoning bylaw amendment, and the drainage has been affected by that new development, where do those existing residents go to determine how the new development has affected their drainage, if in fact it's not just weather related?
You go ahead.
Okay, so I'm not sure about what you mean by new development. If you're talking about like the new subdivision,
No, just the small one-offs.
the small one-offs and whatnot, if they're of a significant size, then we make them do a drainage plan and exercise and they're still creating a problem, they go through the Drainage Act, and technically, you're not allowed to drain onto a neighbor's property.
Civil matter?
It becomes more that way then, yes.
Maybe I'll add to that, the whole piece of a new single lot, they have to have a grading plan. You can't just start mounding up dirt that's too higher than the neighbor. So they have to have a certified grading plan that has to be surveyed, and it has to be constructed as surveyed and reconfirmed through a confirmation of that survey, and that's part of what Bev does. The other piece of it is that, I had a bit of a struggle with this whole thing, and the thing that they say they do is they don't make it worse than pre-existing. So let's say if you had a rain and there's 10 gallons of water go through your property today, they're not gonna make it better. They won't make it worse, but they won't make it better. And in that
May not. They might make it better.
they might make it better, correct, correct, but they're not gonna jump through hula hoops to make it better. They're just gonna do what they need to do to make it what it is. And control any access or extra pavement and control that and manage that so the sheet flow from there gets out to the street. But that's, if there was a problem before, they're not about to solve it. And I'm not sure what's written wrong there, but that's the way it is.
Okay, thanks. Any further comment or discussion?
Chris, Clinton, as you said, it's been going on a long time, and they're more than willing to do all the changes they have done. It says here, about the fence, is that, it is recommended, or are they going to do that fence between the?
That is actually been put on the site plan now, so that is a requirement for them to do.
Okay, thanks. Okay, seeing nothing further, all in favor? That is carried. 8.6.6 is the bylaw to go with that, bylaw number 2019-136. Do I have a mover and a seconder for that? Jason and Michael? Any questions or discussion on the bylaw? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you, Clint. I always look forward to your reports, your verbal reports at council. Okay, 9.1. This is bylaw number 2019-180 pertaining to the OPP policing contract. We have more seconder for that. Michael and Brian? Okay. Dave, did you want to comment on what we've talked about? Any questions or comments from the council? Seeing none, I just update council. Our before I call the question, our detachment commander has been seconded to an upper level in. I think he's gone down to London at the end of this week for 2 months, and then he'll be back. So he's got someone sitting in his place, and he's assured us that he's just a placeholder going there. He's coming back, and he wants to come back and stay back here. So just while we're talking about the contract, that's a good little thing there. So seeing no other questions or comments, all in favor? And that is carried. 9.2, bylaw number 2019-181, and that is the amortizing debentures and principal amount of $3,731,925. The mover and seconder for that. Martin and Barbara? Liam, did you want to comment on that?
Just to state that the council has essentially already approved us going out and obtaining the debenture, so the new information with this is the rate that the debenture will be at is 2.35%.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. 9.3, it's bylaw 2019-182, and that's to establish a highway in the former road. Mover and seconder, please. Barbara? Jason? Do you want to add anything to this, Dave? Nope. Okay. Ryan?
Has the road widening been taken on the rest of that lot? Or is it just for that lot? Deputy.
I don't know if I can answer the whole, but for that lot, it's on 19 and on 12 on both sides.
Oh.
For, cause it's a corner lot, but as the rest is I think it ends there, doesn't it?
That lot is on the north or southeast
south-
corner.
Southwest.
Southeast corner of that
South-
intersection.
Is it east? Okay.
Yeah, there's the intersection. So I'm wondering, is the road widening taken on the farm directly south of that as well?
On the, I believe it has to be on the land to the south as well, because they own both lots.
But it's not showing the,
Is it not?
no,
I don't have that.
it only shows the,
Let's get,
yeah, cause this is the
Okay.
next farm south there. If you bring it up the screen, yeah. So there's lot 28, concession 6. So if you scroll down, please. There's lot 26, concession, is that 5? Is the road widening taken on that piece down here as well?
It hasn't been by this, but that's not to say it wasn't. We'd have to have them search for a pin to see.
It would probably show on
It
there.
would like to show, I would think no, but we
What-
can't really
I guess what I'm getting at is this road widening necessary?
this is for, Lajoy, like on 19 and 12.
And just before you answer, Barb has something to add to that.
And don't we normally, when we have severance, it's the road widening is on severed and retained portion?
Go ahead,
On
Clint.
both.
Okay, so we'll start out with yes, it's on both the severed and the retained portion. As you can see, part 1 is the actual severance here, and it's, that little thin strip is in front of it. And the second part is the larger farm parcel, which it also goes right up the side as well. Can you scroll up to the top? And it's also along, because it's a corner lot, they have the unfortunate, they actually get it taken off the front as well. Dale Pallister used to comment on this every time he come in for a severance and that we do this. It is what it is. It's a sort of a standard thing that we always ask for. This was the recommendation from our Public Works Department, Jim Ellis, and so that's why it was included in the, as a condition in the consent.
Brian?
I guess what I'm getting at is, what concession is that, or what, it's the road allowance between 6 and 7. Has that road been upgraded? Or is it being planned to be upgraded? Do we need to take that? I know what the policy says, but if we're never gonna upgrade that road, why are we taking that slice of land?
So,
I don't never say time.
say never.
Never's a long time, I know
And,
that,
the
but
road allowance today is being used for a lot more things, maybe not up there, but someday, fiber's gonna get buried down the road,
next week,
not next week, but we plan today, back in the old days, in the 90s, we used to get these easements, and we were so cheerful about getting easements, and we never registered them.
right.
And so this is important stuff that we actually get, control. We're not saying don't use it if you're using it for farming practices, but, we just need a wider road allowance in some cases, and not always, but never say never. Maybe Cyber 19 will become a super highway someday, I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
I doubt it.
Coincidence? Barb?
we had this conversation, a little bit ago, in that it may never be widened, but we may require ditch work. We may require that infrastructure and, you know, whether it's fiber or natural gas, and it's planning for the future. If we don't take it now, we have to pay for it later.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. 9.4, bylaw 2019-184. And that's the Molanton Recreation Agreement. Do we have a mover and seconder for that? Michael, move it. Seconder?
Chair Rackle, second.
Sure. Martin Wall.
I will.
Okay. Anything you'd like to add to that, Dave? No. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Consent items. I need mover and seconder, and if anything needs to be pulled out for a separate motion, suggested. Brian?
I'll move acceptance, and nothing needs to be pulled.
Okay. Seconder? Michael? Okay, is there any discussion on any of those items? Not seeing any. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Now we'll need the motion for 10.2. That's consent items for information. I almost got you to move that. You're holding your hand up. Yeah, I was saying, let's move that. Okay, so I have a seconder, and Brian, do we have somebody to move it? Mark, would you like to? Oh, did you? I didn't see that, I'm sorry. You can move the next one. Any items that we want pulled from this? Okay, seeing none. Any comments or questions?
Yep.
Okay, Martin?
Concerning the flag, would we really be looking into that? Is it something that we should discuss? No?
Not now.
Our flag policy kind of deals
Covers
with that,
that.
yeah.
Fair enough.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right, all in favor? And that is carried. Closed session for information. Need a mover and seconder for that. 10.3. Jason? Like, do you want to second this one, Michael? Okay, thanks. I guess if there's any comments on that, we'll have to go into closed session for it. Okay. So, all in favor of the motion? And that is carried. Thank you. Brian, I'll turn the chair over to you for a minute, because I have a notice of motion.
Okay. So the next item of business is, as Mr. Woodbury or the mayor has indicated, is a notice of motion. Would the council like me to read it?
Point of information is, in the past, we've always let the person bringing the notice of motion read their notice of motion.
I'm good with that.
Yeah.
Carry on, sir.
Okay. Whereas Township of Southgate's a member of Saugeen Mobility Regional Transit SMART and is represented by the Board of Directors representing member municipalities, and whereas each Board of Directors determines the policy, priorities, and budgets for SMART, whereas each member municipality financially supports the SMART organization and each of our communities. And whereas the cost to deliver the services continue to rise, impacting our municipal burden on the taxpayers, therefore be it resolved that Southgate Council direct staff to provide notice with a copy of this motion of our intentions to withdraw from Smart Partnership as a member, and that Southgate Council recommend to other Smart member municipalities that we cooperatively explore amalgamation of service with Grey and Bruce counties to deliver Smart service to reduce transit duplication and develop transit efficiencies through one service delivery model, and specifically to reduce our present backhaul time and costs without customers on board. And that council direct staff to distribute this motion to all Smart member municipalities as well as Bruce and Grey County councils for consideration.
Pardon? No. Is there a second for that motion? Mike? Sorry, Mike, seconds that. John, is there a staff report or anything that attaches to this?
No.
So perhaps you could give us a little clarification as to why you brought this forward, unless there's other questions prior to that. Yeah.
Maybe after, okay.
You're on.
The reason I brought this forward is our agreement with Smart Transit is we have to give a year's notice. And so I thought it was prudent at this time to give that year's notice. Chatsworth has also did this a year ago, and they're giving notice, like gave notice again, that they may be out at the end of the year. Our portion would be going up, is going up substantially, our cost for Southgate. We have 17 people that use Smart Transit, and we're going to be going from 26,000 to 34,000 in our contributions for 2020. I think there's some things that need to be done. The board is working very hard now at looking at alternate levels of service, such as maybe every other day or no nighttime or whatever. I just think with the things going on with the county, with Stephanie Stewart being on a 2-year contract up there to work out transit in the county, that it's prudent at this time to at least give the year's notice. We can evaluate during the year whether we want to stick to this or we want to remove the notice and stay in Smart. But at least this gives us options a year down the road, and that's why I brought it forward.
Okay, thanks, John. Dave?
If there's no other questions, maybe I'll add to it.
Well,
There was, okay.
okay,
So-
more information is
Yeah,
good.
so
Yeah, please.
I guess what I'll build on, the CEOs also have a meeting with Smart Transit to kind of voice our concerns and so on. And I guess we were a bit shocked to hear that 55% of the time there's a smart vehicle going up and down the road that they're empty. And so we kind of pushed to say, we got to get this thing more efficient. You know, we need to look at other opportunities to ensure that we don't have multiple crashes of transit vehicles in Grey and Bruce County at the same corner. I'm not sure the message got through from us for sure, and I think there are a lot of concerns, not in just Grey County. I mean, Bruce County, where there's some of them paying a lot more than we are, they're gravely concerned about how they can afford to do this. So I think timing is right on this, to at least put a shot across the bow and say, hey, I mean, this isn't sustainable, and it's an opportunity at the same time to explore whether this Grey County transit model that we're setting up can cater to both these services, to conventional and assisted for people with disabilities.
Okay, thanks. John?
And just one more thing to add. This motion is in no way saying that we're going to leave these people without transit. It's just a matter of how we're going to do it. So we're not leaving a vulnerable portion of our residents out in the cold with this. We're not saying we want to stop their transportation. We just may be doing it different.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. Martin, you had a point?
The 17 people, not that it matters, but demographically, are they more to the east or the west of the I never see the bus around where I travel during the day. Is it more Holstein way, not that way, or?
From what I understand, and I don't know exactly where they are, it isn't at different portions of the township. I know there's some that do shopping in all three communities around Hanover, Durham, and Dundalk.
And the other question is this a precursor to that Saugeen actually going under if all the municipalities withdraw their funding? Or is that because the county comes in and takes over and opens up business to private individuals to cater to these people?
Go ahead, John.
I think what the idea is, and the Smart Board's been working fairly hard on some of this stuff already, but the idea is that this would become part of something. Whether it's a contracted part, or whether it's actually amalgamated into a service, then that's a decision for the counties and things like that.
Thank you.
And I would echo that there was at no time, anybody at a staff level wanted to just, no, we're not in the business anymore. There was never a discussion like that. It's totally to cost of delivery.
Mike?
Yeah, my thing is, I watched the Mennonite community with their bus service they have down here in the south part. And I know they're going to the major cities around, so there's got to be a way that everybody can get on board and use that same service and try to figure out, it's a private company, like, we got to try to, hold our expenses to a certain point. We don't want to be driving these vehicles around for free. And I think there's an opportunity with the county up there to sit down and go and talk to all these other people around that have taxi service, bus services, and work on a plan to make an efficient service for everybody that will look after everybody's needs. Us, internet community, we all have to work together. We're all here together, so we got to learn to share everything together too.
Good. Any other, Barb, go ahead.
So maybe this ties in with the, Stephanie, on a 2-year contract. The grant was 5 years, then it went down to 4 years. Once we're through the evaluation, I think we'll probably have a year left to use up to $500,000. How is that going? Like, how with this withdrawal from SMART, but I thought the idea was to have a conversation between the county and SMART in how we can use that money to create more efficiencies and partnerships there.
So I guess I'll respond to that by saying, I think that's part of the problem, is that there's not enough interest from SMART staff to really, because I think there is an interest from the board, but there isn't an interest from SMART staff to really engage and be open-minded about providing that service. I mean, they need to, get in the sandbox and try and work this out, because, like I say, we could have 4 or 5 vehicles. There's so many services out there. And Stephanie's working with a lot of these other service providers to try and get some synergies, and like right now they're working on with a contractor for a on-demand service. Like, there's no sense in having a vehicle run up and down Highway 10 if there's nobody on it. We got to get them there. So this on-demand service that we think can maybe cater to this as well, or maybe SMART can be part of that on-demand service. But there has to be, I think, more open-mindedness to get there.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So, doing math, and I know that those 17 people rely heavily on this service, and it'd be a huge loss. It's, with the new numbers, it's $1,882 that we're subsidizing per person per year. It's significant, but we do have a lot of people who are vulnerable and do rely on it. How close are, I know that the counties are looking at that door-to-door service, that to use funding. How close are we? If we give our notice, will we have something in place in 12 months?
Absolutely. Like
We're that close?
Yeah, we're that close. Like in the new year, you're going to start to see campaigns and ramping up. They had hoped to get something going in October, November. I'm I'm gonna be up in the county next week, so I wanna get an update myself, but, it's a slow process to get started.
So just one final, to this point, giving our notice, and I know a municipality has done this where they've given the notice and then given the notice again that we're gonna stick out another year. We're not bound to it. We can't, I mean, certainly you don't wanna be like, oh, we're giving you notice and then we're gonna change our minds. We're serious about it, but I would like to know that we have something to offer our residents as a new option. So thank you for that, Dave.
Okay, any other discussion? Mark?
John, Mayor, you only brought this as kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Due diligence for the year, and as it's been mentioned that we could continue if so desired, but it's just the idea of getting it in there first, right? So it's being proactive?
Yes, yeah, that's exactly what it is, and I have no intention of leaving that group, without, the group of people, our residents, without, transportation, but there's more vulnerable groups than the one. And, I don't know by the end of next year, whether SMART will work best for us, or whether something from the county. But if we wait until then, we're bound for another year, so. Okay, any further discussion, questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Thank you. Back to you, my friend. Thank you. Okay, county report. It's actually, the latest one isn't closed, so that, I think it is anyways, but that's good. Brian basically updated you, I think, on one of the most important things is what we're looking at for the budget of 1.46, and the other thing was through a motion of Brian's to county council, it was unanimously supported by the council to lower the speed limit under our circumstances in the village of Dundalk. So that was, I think those are the two real highlights that I'd like to put out. Brian, did you have anything else you wanted to?
Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't announce, of course, everybody probably knows, we have a new warden. Mayor Paul McQueen from Grey Highlands is now the new warden of Grey County. So we wish him the best.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll move on. Members' privilege. I guess the two Santa Claus parades are coming up. Dundalk this Saturday, and the week after is the Holstein parade. Oh, yes. Does anyone else have any good news or celebrations for now? This is when I was going to accept Jamie's resignation, but.
Well, I know who's buying the drinks on Saturday, Friday.
You're thinking, Barb?
I know, you can, no, I wish. No,
No.
there was something that I,
Well.
oh,
I do have something.
Okay.
Actually, Councillor Scherson reminded me that the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority has, and its foundation, are holding its Christmas in the Country this weekend, Friday through Sunday. I had hoped to have an update on what was happening on Sunday, given our other commitments, but this year, instead of it being held at the Bluff, it's actually going to be held in the town of Hermosa, and they're closing down the town to allow for this event. It looks to be really exciting, and I hope to get out there at some point, but it's not looking good so far.
Thank you. Not seeing anything else. We'll move on to the closed meeting resolution, and I'll read this this one. Be it resolved that council proceed in closed session at 12:06 in order to address matters relating to personal matters of an identifiable individual. That's staff report HR 2019-017C, CAO performance review, and the Human Resources Coordinator Kayla Vest and Deputy Clerk Lindsay Green remain in attendance. Do I have a mover and second to that? Martin and Michael? Just a question?
You said 07C, I think.
01C.
01C.
Yeah, I don't know what I said, it's 01C. Okay? Did I get a mover and second? Yep, I did, good. All in favor?